The young man in the gray business suit is Qin Feng, an ordinary office worker who travels and works like a hired slave to make his boss happy. When he saw his bus, which had just pulled up to the stop, he cheered up a little and accelerated his pace in order to have time to take a seat and in no case be late for work. Because the boss had been acting very nervous lately. Abruptly, a crowd flew out from behind the guy, who also ran to the bus. One of the men shouted at Feng to get out of his way, pushing him hard with his elbow. Qin Feng, who was thrown aside by the blow, fell on top of the girl, burying his face in her chest, who was walking with her boyfriend. The moment was very awkward, and the guy didn't even really have time to say anything and explain. The guy threw an evil look in the direction of Feng, baring his teeth. Qin Feng cast a ridiculous glance up, realizing that he was most likely going to end now. The guy, clenching his hand into a fist, hit Qin Feng hard in the face, so much so that he completely lost his balance. The office worker's face almost turned into a flat cake at the moment. At this time, a big green jeep was rushing along the highway. The car hit Feng. He was thrown up by the force of the collision of the guy and landed hard back on the asphalt. Blood oozed out in a huge stream, quickly staining the road. Qin Feng understood that he was unlikely to escape death, so lying on the ground and bleeding, he thought that he was probably the first person to die such a ridiculous death. Apparently, due to the strange circumstances of his death, he was returned to a fantasy world called Hyungu, where he was already an unborn baby. He was not alone in the womb at all, but with his younger brother, who was biting his leg. Children have a conflict. Feng, shouting that he is in pain, kicks the baby of the chosen one and asks him to get away from him or at least stop hurting. At the same moment, he gets 10 villain points for kicking the chosen one. It turned out to be his brother of the chosen level. Qin Feng also said that according to his extensive experience as a bookworm, the hero's family members always suffer first, and then they themselves. My brother continued to wipe tears from his face in frustration. Qin Feng began to explain to the reader that it is for this reason that the baby has no choice at all and he must train daily and diligently in order not to get into trouble in the future, and also not to let his family and brother get into trouble. And this is the new family of our hero Qin Feng. A pregnant woman in a luxurious silk dress with a green bowl in her hands is Qin Feng's mother, the Celestial of Mount Taipei, the secret elixir of immortality of the Qin family. It is said that it was specially made several thousand years ago just so that babies could develop their abilities and temper the power of heavenly Kai while still in the womb. Qin Feng continues to praise this elixir, which he has been fueled by throughout development. The boy explains that this thing is not cheap at all and explains that the secret of the Qin family is quite wise and not bad. The man says that with the help of special techniques, they delayed the appearance of a child for 100 years. 97 years have passed, and finally, after 3 years, we are ready to meet our long-awaited and desired child, whom they will love with all their heart. This dark-haired man with a tuft of hair on his head turned out to be Qin Feng's father, Qin Tian, who is the head of the Qin family. He was insanely happy that it was his son, a future warrior and a receiver in his father's place, who would be born in his family. After telling about the members of his new family, the baby jumped to his feet and, smiling broadly, declared that he was now ready to introduce himself. At this time, his brother was located in the back, carefully watching what was happening. Crouching and bulging his eyes, he shouted that he was in pain. Turning around, the baby saw that it was the younger brother who had bitten his leg again. Qin Feng goes into a rage, cursing his brother. He rushes at him with his fists, again harshly offending him to tears. For humiliating the chosen fan, another 30 villain points are awarded. After gaining enough villain points, he activated the halo of the Great Emperor and received a divine level practice, which was called the Art of the 33 Luck of Heaven. Everyone in the room was admiring. One of the men exclaimed that this child is incredible, because usually children in the womb are unconscious and are not capable of self-improvement on their own. But here is apparently a special case that emphasizes strength. The father hugged his wife with a smile, putting his hand on her stomach. He was very proud of his son, who, being still an infant, had already begun to master various practices and talents. This is a good sign, so his son will definitely be the chosen one of heaven. Feng looks at his brother again with an evil grin and says that he sees no other way how he can cope with his irritability, so he offends his younger brother. He also said that he is the villain of fate, and his brother is the son of heaven. And if he scores more villain points, then in the future the brother will not be able to send the brother to heaven, because he will be much stronger than him in his Kai, and will always be able to fight back. After spanking his brother again, and approving his reasonableness, Fang chuckled and said that he liked this system very much. And then, if his brother is with him all the time throughout his childhood, Fang will be able to develop quickly. Another night has come. On this full moon, its color was unusually red. There was also a strong wind and it was cool. Nothing foreshadowed unusual events, but everything is just the opposite. Kid Feng realized that 3 years had finally passed and he was ready to come to this world to commit more brazen and cruel villainies, making himself the strongest villain of fate that ever existed in their fantasy world. There were heart-rending screams inside the palace. It was Qin Feng's mother who went into labor. She was helped by 2 court girls who urged the lady to strain herself. It was quite difficult for the mistress, despite her young age. At this time, behind the screen, the father was walking from side to side, nervous about the passing birth. He was very worried, because they had been waiting for this child for 100 years and God forbid something would go wrong and something would happen to the child or his mother. And finally there were screams in the room. The court lady was holding a dark-haired newborn Qin Feng in her arms, screaming at the whole palace. The father rejoices, because the son in their family was really long awaited. He was very happy about the birth of Qin Feng. The baby was healthy and strong, the real pride of the family. The girl with pigtails, touching the little boy, passes the child to her master. By that time, the baby was no longer crying and lay quietly wrapped in a diaper, looking at his father. What a freak, I hope I don't look like him wherever my mother looked, because they say that the company of beautiful ladies makes us more beautiful, Qin Feng thought. He doesn't want his father to hug him, so he starts screaming and waving his legs, hitting him on the chin with his heel, for which he received 2 evil points. Qin Feng is unhappy that he got so few points. Points are awarded depending on the difficulty of the task of the villain of fate. He realizes that the glasses will still come in handy and continues to pester his father, grabbing his long hair and face. The father is delighted with the strength of the baby and claims that he will grow up to be a future emperor. And in the meantime, the baby again receives bonuses in the form of evil points, increasing his level. The gray-haired woman who delivered the baby reports with complete surprise in her eyes that the mistress will have another baby. The mistress is shocked and asks if they are twins or not. The court lady resumed her work and tried to get the second baby out of the mother's womb. The lady with fatigue on her face asks what's the matter. The court lady says that the second baby does not want to be born yet. Qin Feng starts to get angry again, grabbing his father's face. After all, if the second kid is not burning now, then how will he get extra villain points? The second court lady, who helped with the birth, asks the gentleman to give her a screaming baby in her arms. The father hands over the child, clutching the face that is sick after pinching. The girl with pigtails, taking the baby, calms him down and offers the young gentleman to drink milk. Calming down for a few seconds, the child stared at her, having fallen into hysterics again. The child begins to roar and waving his arms in all directions. He does not want to eat and is very disappointed that his brother does not want to be born. Accidentally hitting the girl's chest with the palm of his hand, he is awarded 50 evil points for completing the cute squeak task. Then it dawned on the child. Surprised, Qin Feng repeats his prank, for which he again receives 50 evil points to his account. The little gentleman thought about it. Is this thing really so cool that he gets so many points for touching it? The child smiled broadly and suddenly realized that the real and true joy of the villain's life lies precisely in this. In the backyard of the Qin family's garden, the ringing laughter and cries of children resound. The boy plays tag with the court girls, catching up with them with his eyes closed. With a black blindfold, seeing absolutely nothing, he runs with his arms wide apart and tries to catch them while they cheerfully run away from the young gentleman and give him hints. After catching up with Zhu Yun, Feng grabbed and tore off the bandage that held the dress. It began to subside, but the girl managed to cover herself and not let it fall. The satisfied gentleman rejoices and tells the girl that she has lost, holding the bandage in her hands and squeezing it tightly. The girl shyly covers herself, standing behind the boy. After receiving 200 points for another prank and completing the task gentleman's errand, he removes the black ribbon and checks whether he has raised his limit level. In the world of ancient times, the levels of limits are divided from the lowest to the highest, and each of them is divided into 9 heavens. The limit of Kai and blood, the limit of a new era, the limit of the Superman, the limit of entering the path, the limit of heavenly bodies, the limit of mortality, the limit of life and death, and the misty limit. By tapping on the display, Qin Fei was ready to make the transition to the limit of a new era. When he activated the transition, the boy shone with a red light and began to make a breakthrough into the next to a new limit. clenching his fists tightly and staring intently at the red light. The boy shouted that he was about to break through the limit of the opening of a new era, and the rest needed to scatter to the sides. The red flash grew brighter and brighter. The limit began to open up before the boy, and it was already possible to enter it. Looking at his hands, Faye rejoiced and realized that the breakthrough in the limit of the opening of a new era was over, and he managed to do it right. The girls who had been standing behind the boy all this time stared at the young gentleman in surprise, not understanding what had happened and what it all meant. Faye spread his arms wide, smiled, narrowed his eyes, ran to Bai Yu, announcing to her that he wanted to hug a young girl. Bai Yu smiled back at the young lord. Bending down a little, she opened her arms in response, meeting the running boy with a willingness to hug him. Running closer, the boy hugged the girl's face and kissed Bai Yu, for which he received another 50 evil points, completing a new task: kiss your beloved. Bai Yu told the boy not to kiss girls without permission anymore. The girl with pigtails added with emotion that the gentleman is only 3 years old and he does not understand anything yet. Qin Feng shouted that he liked sleeping with Bai Yu. The girl replied approvingly that the boy's wish would be fulfilled. The emperor and his wife were sitting in the Dazia dynasty hall. The wife asked if she was really the only one Emperor Huang San loved. Emperor Dazia smiled, looked at her and whispered that she was his greatest jewel. Suddenly, the weather deteriorated sharply. A thunderstorm thundered outside. A real hurricane rose. Such sudden, spontaneous changes can mean only one thing: someone has made a breakthrough to a new limit. The emperor was angry and couldn't figure out who did it. His wife was extremely scared and worried. Using one of his superpowers, Emperor Dazia looked into the gap of the limit and saw a boy, Qin Feng, the darling of the fate of the Qin family. The emperor was stunned by the fact that already at the age of 3 the child was able to know the limit of the discovery of a new era. He seemed too strong to the emperor and he thought that the child should be destroyed. Meanwhile, the 3 Qin court girls that Qin Feng had played with earlier were sitting in the women's bath and having fun. It was very hot inside and the girls were almost naked. Young Master Qin Feng was standing around the corner and spying on half-naked girls. For this prank, he also received a reward of 100 villain points, finishing the gentleman's errand. Don't think anything bad. The boy is a decent guy, and even if these are system orders for glasses, he won't peek at girls washing. Orders come daily and you can get points for them. Suddenly, Qin Feng received an alert. A system order was opened for them to wash with Zhui Yun. A reward of as much as 500 villain points was announced. Qin Fei does not intend to miss the opportunity to earn extra points to become stronger and immediately began to fulfill it, quietly running inside the bathhouse to the pool. One of the girls was sitting on the edge. The boy crept up from behind and decided to scare her with a small green caterpillar, which he began to wave at her face. The girl jumped up and started screaming loudly, and the child laughed, throwing the caterpillar towards the pool. Another 200 villain points were earned. The young master approached Zhui Yun and asked her if he could wash with her together. The girl was embarrassed and wanted to say something to the boy, but another girl interrupted her. The girl with pigtails smiled at Qin Feng and allowed him to join them, and also said that she could help the little gentleman undress. Taking off the blue shirt from the boy, the girls again noticed that he was only 3 years old and he absolutely did not understand what was going on. A joyful Qin Feng was lowered into the pool in his arms. Laughing, he thought that girls are very naive, thinking that the boy is only a 3-year-old and can't understand anything. At night, Qin Feng sat and looked at the screen, which reflected the achievements and the points he received from the villain. Given the time, the second one should have already been born so that the boy could get more points. Sometimes at night he learned to control his power as the villain of fate. The boy's legs began to glow with blue flames. Villains must train their fangs like a wolf and their legs like a sheep. Only if Qin Feng can convince his brother, he will be able to become the fastest man of ancient times, and no one will be able to catch up with him. The boy quickly ran out into the yard, stopped abruptly and continued to glow. He thought that if his brother did not agree, then Feng would be able to quickly get away from him. Putting his hands on his belt, Qin Feng laughed out loud, still imagining how powerful a villain of fate he would become in the future. 3 days later, the young gentleman was sitting on a tree in the forest and looked up and saw that something was happening in the sky. He thought it was his brother who was going to be born. Some kind of blue sphere formed with trees nearby, similar to a teleport. A certain man was floating in the air with his assistants, and in front of them stood Qin Feng's father and a man with a long gray beard. The great-grandfather of the Qin family asked Lao Naiqiu why he came to their house and if he wanted to declare war on the Qin dynasty. Feng's father stood behind and tensely waited for the answer from Emperor Dazia. It was the emperor of the Dazhu dynasty. They sank to the ground to the boy, who stood and watched intently, his fists clenched. The emperor recognized the eldest son of the Qin family. Smiling, he began to reach out with his hand to stroke the boy. Qin Feng ran away with lightning speed, standing behind the bearded man, dodging the emperor's hand, leaving a blue flame behind him. The surprised emperor admired how fast the boy's reflexes were at his age. No one at the age of 3 could break through the limit of the discovery of a new era, and even be able to control their movements so masterfully. The old man apologized to the venerable Dazia and said that the boy was shy of strangers, so he reacted to the emperor's gesture in this way. Laughing loudly in response, he said that there was nothing wrong with it and everything was in perfect order. Opening his eyes wide, Qin Feng stared at the man and asked him if he was really the emperor. Dazia smiled again and said it was the truth. There have long been legends that His Majesty is wise and valiant, noble and neglects himself for the sake of his people. Adamant in the struggle, unshakable in his will, he retains the presence of mind and unsurpassed. The boy asked the emperor if he had come to someone else's house empty-handed, hoping for some gift from a man. The emperor was puzzled by a sudden question. He was a little confused and said that the majestic Emperor Dazia could not come empty-handed. Reaching into the pocket of his robe, the emperor took out a small box and handed it to the boy with a smile. "Look," he said. The box opened and a bright light poured out of it. These were Chang Kun's 9 swords. 10,000 years ago, it was the sword of heaven's pet, the god of cold weapons Chun Kun. There are 9 swords in total: the punishment of the celestial, the killing of gods, the extermination of Buddhas, the subjugation of demons, the taming of evil spirits, the beheading of saints, the expulsion of spirits, and the defeat of troops. Each sword has a rare blade of a divine warrior. By combining 9 swords, you can find the 10th divine warrior, whose strength is comparable to 10,000 mortals. Qin Feng stood silently, staring up at the flying legendary swords. The pleased emperor looked at the young master, closed the box and asked the boy how he liked his treasure. But which one to give him, the emperor thought. He spent so many people, resources and riches to collect them all, and then hand them over to someone who doesn't even appreciate them. He thought that it would even be possible to give a divine dress, and not a sword, or give only one. The boy snatched the box from the emperor's hands with lightning speed, which surprised him greatly. Qin Feng looked at the emperor with a childish smile and thanked him for the salary in the form of 9 swords of Chun Kun. The confused emperor stretched out his hand to the box and said that he meant something completely different. The old man and Qin Feng's father maliciously looked at what was happening and began to sarcastically tell the emperor that he could give 9 swords to Chun Kun with one wave of his hand. The Qin family will not be able to return such a gift. The old man continued that His Majesty is a true dragon and the son of heaven. All 4 seas are in his possession. How can he care about worldly riches? A gift is not as expensive as attention. The Qin family now understands how deep His Majesty's sense of duty is and promise that the one who insulted him will answer to them. Father says that Feng has no manners and demands to thank the emperor for such a generous gift. The boy bows and thanks His Majesty for his kindness. For an open theft, he gets 1,000 villain points. The emperor was angry at the boy, baring his teeth. He was about to start swearing when Feng spoke. The young gentleman asked if the emperor had heard about the provincial tradition. When the older generation meets the younger for the first time, it gives a gift. The old man and Feng's father sarcastically confirm that it looks like there really is such a tradition, and it seems that they recall such a thing. The shocked emperor thought that it would be better if he stayed in bed with a concubine, and in vain he left and met such a little bastard without shame and conscience. The boy continued to shame the emperor of such a great Dazia dynasty for not knowing the tradition, and not being able to give a gift to the youth. After all, when a noble person does not observe traditions, it is a very shameful act. The smiling emperor leaned over to the youngster, taking out 2 more blue balls from his pocket. It was another rare jewel that he was going to surprise the young master with. He handed them to the boy and said it was his now. The thing turned out to be a heaven-given bottle. Qin Feng seemed to know what this thing was. After a little thought, he remembered what this item was for. Qin Feng curiously examined the gift. Although the talisman will not protect against attacks, it can increase the speed of skill improvement and speed up mana recovery in battle. Thanking the emperor again, the boy folded his hands and bowed to him several times, thinking to himself what a fine fellow Feng was. Smiling, the emperor said that he was not worth such thanks. There was sadness and irritation on his face, because the boy had put him in a very uncomfortable position. Qin Feng was up to something again, and the emperor suspected it, frightened by the child's new antics. He has already received 2,000 villain points for the emperor's gifts. Opening his eyes wide and looking at the emperor with an innocent face, the boy said that he also had a younger brother and he was also entitled to some kind of gift. The emperor coughed and said that he suddenly remembered an urgent matter and he had to go. It was not enough that the boy, in front of the head of the Qin family, demanded anything else from the fund of his treasures, which Dazia collected himself. After saying goodbye, he flew up and rushed away from the Qin family. The boy shouted that when he had time, he would bring his brother to meet the emperor. The men of the Qin family stood looking at the sky and saw off the departing Emperor Dazia. After a small bright flash, the emperor disappeared from the valley of the Qin family. The father approached the boy and said that he was too young to have such a gift as the swords of Qin Feng, so he suggested that they should be kept by his father for the time being. Qin Feng began to cry, accusing his father of saying how much he loves his son while he steals the treasure he gave him. After all, it really was a gift that he himself had received from Emperor Dazia. The father was confused. Holding the box in his hands, he tried to find the right words to calm his son. After all, he did not want the boy to get upset and begin to take offense at him. The old man kicked the head of the Qin family with an accusation about how he dares to steal his own son's treasure, in addition calling him a loser. The father accepted that the box should still be given to Qin Feng. The great-grandfather began to calm his grandson, asking him to stop crying. Patting him on the head, he handed him a box with the legendary 9 swords of Qin Feng. Qin Feng turned away and broke into a grin. He even had to pretend and cry to get the gift back to himself. It's a pity that the villain points are not given for when every time the little villain of fate deceives someone. Lightning broke out in the sky. The boy looked up with the thought of who had been brought to them again, because the lightning was somewhat similar to the one when Emperor Dazia arrived. Qin Fei continued to stand in surprise, not understanding what was going on. Fei's father suddenly remembered something instantly. Hitting his forehead with his palm, he realized that Saiyu was still giving birth. Turning around and quickly rushing towards the house, he could not believe how his memory had failed him so much that he had completely forgotten about the date when the youngest child of the Qin family was already due to appear. Qin Feng was pleased with this. 3 years have passed and his stupid brother should finally be born already. After all, he knows what Fang has been through during this time, suffering from a constant shortage of light villain glasses. The boy saw a joyful father with a newborn brother in his arms. With a terrible smile, he walked towards them. He was very interested in what his brother looked like and what he was already capable of. The older brother called out to the father standing with the spinning baby. The father turned to the newborn, who was named Hao. "Look, son, who's here?" he exclaimed. Qin Feng asked his father if his brother was ill, because he didn't even cry and was very quiet. Of course, the boy was already starting his next prank. It was necessary to check whether the young gentleman gets points for the atrocities he commits against his stupid brother. Swinging his palm, Qin Feng slapped his little brother's leg. Immediately there was a loud cry. Hao shouted to the whole room, so much so that this cry made everyone turn around who was nearby, and the father was surprised by the act of his eldest son. Looking at him questioningly, the head of the Qin family asked how Qin Feng dared to hit his little brother. The young gentleman, making an innocent face, said that he was afraid of the trouble that could be with his brother. Smiling slyly, he received 100 villain points for slapping his heaven-chosen brother and 30,000 points for making him cry and releasing hereditary Kai. Qin Feng sat in his room and checked the statistics. Ever since he broke through the first heaven of the opening limit of the first epoch, the tempering speed had slowed down, and the young master was noticeably concerned about this fact. Fortunately, his stupid brother, as Qin Feng himself calls him, has finally been born. The elder brother needs only him, so as not to worry about the absence of the villain's glasses, because now he can commit pranks against him. Opening a huge wheel of techniques on his display, Qin Feng was waiting with interest for something unrealistically cool. After scrolling it, after a short period of time it stopped, and the young gentleman was glad to get the prize. Among the techniques, one could win such as Invulnerability of Heaven, Conversion to Ishvara, Double Pupil, Sacred Body of Battle, Body of the Supreme Lord, Precious Skill of the True Dragon, and others. A message of congratulations appeared on the display. It was written there that the host had the reception of drawing the sword for the execution of heaven. Exulting, Qin Feng could not restrain his joy for a long time. This was his first time having the opportunity to scroll through it. Qin Feng sat back cross-legged and closed his eye. Frozen and holding his breath, he began to visualize this technique in order to familiarize himself with it. With full concentration, he was ready to study. The shadow of the master appeared in front of him. The silhouette of a man stood with his hands behind his back. After bowing to Qin Feng, a moment later he proceeded to demonstrate the reception that the young master had won. Taking out his sword from the scabbard, the shadow of the master demonstrated a real grace of fighting movements. Swinging it to the sides, the blade could be heard slicing through the air. Every movement of the fighter reflected years or even centuries of hard training. Qin Feng furrowed his face, completely immersed in learning and studying every movement of the Shadow Master. Tongues of red flame began to appear around the boy, but they did not burn him. It was a force that was gradually increasing in the young master. When it was all over, Qin Feng jumped up from his seat and started shouting full of emotion how cool the reception was for him, because studying it at the age of 3 is very rare and lucky, because many children simply do not have the power to do it. The young gentleman, without ceasing to rejoice at his good fortune, stressed that fortune was on his side again and he was not going to let her go. Suddenly he came up with a brilliant idea, because he can use the points he has accumulated. Qin Feng raised his hand up, turning back to the system. A happy young man with a wide smile on his face shouted out that he wanted to buy 1 month of the Aura of Intelligence, spending 30,000 villain points on it. And now another month has passed. Young Qin Feng's great-grandfather came to visit his grandson. It was evident from the elder's smile that he missed him very much. Someone told great-grandfather that his grandson Qin Feng had started training with a sword. The old man explained that one of the purposes of his visit was to give instruction on swordsmanship so that his grandson could become a real expert in this field. Qin Feng wasn't too happy about it. Looking down sadly, the boy thought that he would rather play with the guys in the backyard than devote time to training. Let his younger brother, the chosen one of heaven, take his breath away. Great-grandfather said that every person who hardens himself should realize and hack into his nose the idea that it is impossible to have a proud heart. After all, a person who does not know the measure of pride becomes blind and ceases to see what is happening around. At first, slowly raising his right hand, with a light movement, the old man picked up a few fallen leaves from the tree, which began to circle around his fingers. In the next second, with one sharp movement, gathering 2 fingers together, the old man directed them clearly to the place he had chosen as his target. His gaze was unwavering, and his hand was as hard as steel. Qin Feng stood next to his great-grandfather and watched as he smashed a huge stone boulder into a pile of small stones with one movement of his hand. The green wave with which the old man broke the stone soon disappeared. Qin Feng's great-grandfather said that the boy had just seen a military technique of the first heavenly step, which he had learned a long time ago, a technique called spinning a falling leaf. Qin Feng continued to stare in amazement as the leaves swirled around the shattered stone. The great-grandfather added that at that time, without getting hot, he was stubbornly tempered at home to finally finish in 10 years and become famous all over the world. Doubting that this technique was so complicated, Qin Feng stamped his foot, which lit up with blue fire, and sent the leaves towards the stone fountain. They flew like arrows and very fast. Hitting the stone, the leaves did not cause any damage to the stone bowl on the fountain, bouncing off it. Qin Feng realized that he had failed to repeat the technique that his great-grandfather had shown him. Scratching his face, the boy thought that really for such stuff as a military reception of the first heavenly step, you need to stay at home and harden yourself for 10 whole years, because it seems that it's so easy. 5 years have passed. Young Master Qin Feng has grown noticeably during this time. The young man wore dark long hair, like his father. While taking a hot bath, he sat thinking about how he would be able to overcome the next limit. The water was quite hot, but it continued to heat up. Qin Feng blushed slightly and tensed up. Something was about to happen, and the young master felt it very well. Closing his eyes, he continued to concentrate. Suddenly, in the next instant, opening his eyes, Qin Feng raised his head and let out a loud cry. The water began to fly out of the tub in huge splashes, and a bright yellow-purple aura began to glow around the young man, which rushed upwards. Great-grandfather and father were standing on the street when a force broke through from the roof of the Qin family mansion, marking the transition to a new limit for one of their family's children. The surprised men were shocked by what was happening, not understanding how he managed to break through. Qin Hao broke through the 5th heaven of the limit of the opening of a new era at the age of 5, and Qin Feng broke through to the limit of Superman at the age of 8. Both got into the history of ancient times, both brothers and none ordinary, going naked into the yard to his father and great-grandfather, without taking anything from his clothes. Young Qin Feng asked his father, who stood frozen in place, being shocked by his son's act, where his younger brother Hao was now. The head of the Qin family and the grandfather were outraged by the child's act. The great-grandfather thought that if the child is tempered from year to year at home, then he will get worse and worse from year to year, wherever his worthless father looks. The boy walked past proudly. Qin Feng realized that his father and grandfather would not tell him anything sensible now, but would only be able to count him out for this act. He himself will be able to cope with the search for brother Hao. The system congratulated Qin Feng for his perfect breakthrough to the superhuman limit, which caused an epic for a villainous fate. It was necessary to snatch the august bones from my brother. For this, he will receive a reward in the form of invincible double pupils. Qin Feng thought that there was some kind of malfunction in the system. How can he rip out his brother's bones because it could kill him? Absolutely not understanding anything, he began to poke at the display, asking if everything was in order and what kind of nonsense the system was giving out. Further, the system said that the august bones can be broken and then put in their place, then they can grow again and there will be no harmful consequences. Qin Feng thought about it. The boy wondered if he could trust this, because the system assignment actually sounds like complete nonsense. Although the bones are a legendary treasure, how can they be put back in place and grow again? After thinking it over again, Qin Feng continued to walk around the outer courtyard completely without any clothes from side to side and decided that he most likely would not fulfill this assignment of the system and needed to be careful. Father and grandfather stood looking at each other, trying to figure out what was really going on. Young Master Qin Feng walked towards the forest, and the father asked why the boy was not looking for his father, but for someone else. Grandpa asked who exactly. Deep in the thicket of the forest among the trees and leaves, Qin Feng's little brother, Qin Hao, was hiding. He was lying on one of the trees, sweetly asleep on a large branch. The younger brother did not like to stay at home and often got out of the palace. Qin Feng had already managed to get dressed by the time he came for his younger brother Hao. Looking up, he noticed his brother sprawled on a tree, legs and arms spread wide. So that's where you are, Qin Feng thought. Finding a brother wasn't as difficult as you might think. The elder brother knew well that Hao likes to walk in the forest after lunch, when the sun is still high in the sky. Climbing up the tree to his younger brother Hao, Qin Feng crept up very quietly without waking him up. Standing on a nearby branch, the young gentleman bowed his head, looked at the sleeping young man. At first, Qin Feng imagined that in his dreams he was born into one of the richest families of his continent, and imagined in his thoughts how he could spend his life on partying and extravagance, drowning in the luxury of this life. But because of the appearance of his brother, this little guy, he now has to train every day to learn how to protect himself and his family too. Maybe it's just a bad fate and Qin Feng should just follow this path. Waving his palm and closing his eyes, Qin Feng aimed his hand at brother Hao, slapping him to wake up the little one born to the chosen of fate. The system counted the deed by crediting Qin Feng with 100 villain points. When he woke up, little brother Hao was very happy to see Qin Feng. Smiling at him, he invited his brother to sneak out of the palace and go to play in the neighboring city, which is a few miles away. Qin Feng was surprised by his younger brother Hao's suggestion. He had never asked his older brother to play together before. He thought that they really didn't spend much time together and agreed. A crowd of people gathered on one of the busy shopping streets. Their attention was attracted by two boys who were standing by the body wrapped in a white handkerchief. The boys cried and mourned the loss. They were orphaned in this city. The children standing next to the body were also dressed in white clothes with black ornaments. The eldest son, covering his face, holding back tears, held a cup in his hands to collect some coins for the orphaned children. People were coming closer. Suddenly, the ringing bangs of coins on the walls of the bowl were heard. The crowd, imbued with the grief of two young sons, began to throw money to children who had lost their father. Money kept pouring in and out endlessly, and people brought regrets. After around the corner of one of the houses, two guys sat hunched over and counted the coins they had earned. 1, 2, 3, 73. The boys were Qin Feng and Qin Hao. With their trick, they deceived people to collect some coins. But they did not expect at all that people would sympathize with them so much that they would throw so many gold coins. Qin Hao looks very happy. Their prank with his brother was a success, and the younger brother offers to go for a snack, something delicious. Qin Feng was also pleased with the trick he had done. Looking at his younger brother, he said that Hao was right. A snack would be a good reward. The elder brother offered Hao to eat fried meat with bamboo shoots, but Hao only looked surprised in response. The older brother had a very strange idea about the dish he had just come up with. Comparing the stick with bamboo and its shoots with the baby's ass, he eventually got this dish by crossing two actions. Hao shouted in delight. After all, he really loves to eat and agrees with Qin Feng's suggestion. The older brother grinned maliciously, because his younger and stupid brother still did not understand what was really waiting for him. A man who was lying under a white handkerchief in front of the doors of one of the shops suddenly stood up, throwing back the fabric. People around were scared and ran away screaming, decided that the deceased father of the boys had just been resurrected. The man in the gray raincoat scratched his head, not understanding at all what had just happened. He saw the reaction of people who shouted that he was resurrected, But after all, the man did not die at all, but just lay and slept, covered with a white blanket. The man got to his feet, yawned loudly, and realized that the screams of people around him did not matter to him. He's hungry and now he's going to look for something to eat. It was just a homeless man who was resting on the street. Returning home, the two brothers were already waiting for an enraged father, who found out about the deception that the boys had started in the city. Qin was the first to experience his anger. Taking his shoe, the father began to flog his younger brother on the ass with it. The father beat again and again until the child's ass turned red. Hao was screaming and crying, so much so that it could be heard all over the yard. The boy denied his guilt, and the head of the Qin family called the prank of the two boys a complete look. Qin Feng covered his eyes with his hand and asked not to beat his younger brother, because he had absolutely nothing to do with what happened in the city. But in fact, Qin Feng had slandered his brother, throwing all the blame on him. Having received 200 villain points for having slandered brother Hao, chosen by heaven, in front of his father, Qin Feng continued to cover his face, already grinning, saying that his brother was only 5 years old. He was still young. His father should forgive him this time. The embittered father continued to be in complete anger. He objected that he could not let his younger brother Hao go, because he was fulfilling a sacred duty and beating his son, punishing him for what they had done in the shopping area. Brother Qin continued to shed tears and scream. He yelled that his father was nasty and he didn't like him the most in the family because he was constantly swearing at his younger brother. When the father stopped whipping the boy, brother Fang came up to him. The elder brother began to calm Qin Hao, wiping his tears with a white handkerchief. The boy looked at Qin Feng, gradually stopping shedding tears. He saw him as the best of the family members who always treated him well. Now it becomes clear what Qin Feng meant when he told his brother to taste such a dish as fried meat with bamboo shoots. The older brother thought to himself with a grin that childhood without this delicacy is not the same at all. Qin Hao was lying on his stomach in the room after his punishment. His ass was burning, and it was all red from the blows that it was difficult for the boy to sit anywhere. Suddenly, the elder brother came into the room to check on Hao and find out how he was. Qin Feng had a jar of some kind of elixir in his hands. When he approached his younger brother Hao, he began to pour the drug into the place where his father's blows flew with his boot. Feng thought to himself that his brother needed to recover faster. After all the happiness of the elder brother depends on Hao and only on him, chosen by heaven. After pouring out half of the bottle, Feng closed it and looked at his brother. He turned around and said that Qin Feng treated him very well. Qin Feng smiled and said that they were fulfilling their duty, the duty of an elder brother, so he simply had to take care and protect Hao. After patting his younger brother on the head, Qin Feng started to get to his feet. Continuing to smile and look at his younger brother, Qin Feng thought that in the end Hao was chosen by heaven and he would do everything so that his source of villain points and various errands would recover as quickly as possible. Hao was lying on his stomach with his arms and chin crossed, continuing to sulk at his bad father. He again compared him to his brother, who was always kind, and his father only beats the boy on the ass for every prank. Bending down to Hao, Qin Feng winked at him and smiled softly, whispered that the elder brother had a brilliant plan with which the younger brother would be able to take revenge on his father. Hao was interested in this proposal. Continuing to lure his brother into another prank, Qin Feng began to say that this was their father after all, and perhaps it would not be worth telling about this plan in order not to take revenge on his father. Hao stared with his eyes wide open, overwhelmed with interest in what kind of plan his brother Qin Feng had come up with. Hao began to beg his brother to tell him, promising that his older brother could not worry and he would definitely not betray him under any circumstances. Qin Feng realized that the younger brother had fallen into his trap and began to talk, closing his eyes. That the older brother, of course, was not like that at all, but since Hao really wanted to know about this plan, he would tell his curious brother everything. But Qin Feng is just like that, because he is the villain of fate and never miss an opportunity to create another prank, especially by the hands of another person. He said that dad has a small one now and if Hao tells mom about it. Qin Hao literally blossomed and shone with his wide smile. He looks with wide eyes at Qin Feng, who has just given away his father's secret and realized what threatens his father if mom finds out what is inside him. A huge crater appeared in the backyard, which was ordered to be excavated by Qin Tian's wife, the mother of 2 boys. There were pots filled with gold coins nearby. There were a lot of pots, and some part was still inside the pit. The mother of the Qin family stood behind her father and shouted loudly at him. Qin Tian had learned to hide such large stashes behind her back, and if not for Hao, she would never have known that they had been hiding under the nose of Qin Tian's wife for so long. When he heard that it was his youngest son, Qin Hao, who betrayed his father's secret. He was completely shocked, not believing his ears. How did he dare to do this to him? How did he even know about the hiding place that his father had so carefully hidden? Enraged by the words he heard, the father bared his teeth, clutched his head, and thought about how disobedient his youngest son turned out to be. The campaign of Qin Tian flogged him too little, so it is necessary to reconsider the methods of education. Rushing out of the house, Qin Tian rushed towards the courtyard where his youngest son Hao was. Picking up the first broom he came across, he shouted for the little brat to stop, but Hao instantly ran away from his angry father. After running through half of the Qin family's yard, little Hao saw his older brother Fang. Jumping up to him, the child rushed into his brother's arms with a plea for help, so that he would save him from the wrath of his father, who was running after him. Fang asked in surprise if everything was alright. Catching up with the prankster, who gave out the place where the hidden stash in gold lies, the father grabbed Hao by the collar, pulling him to himself. Qin Feng continued to stand and watch what was happening. The father of the Qin family was in a real rage like never before. Swinging a broom taken from the outer courtyard, the father grabbed and tore the boy off the ground. Qin Hao's eyes watered like a stream. The father continued that he gave the boy the opportunity to run and asked if he would run away from him again when he did a prank. Taking off his younger brother's pants, his father began to flog him on the ass again, and Hao continued to scream and cry, swinging his legs in pain. Qin Feng covered his face and laughed maliciously, because he had arranged everything so that his brother would be punished again for the sake of 200 points of the villain. A few days passed, and on another summer evening, the whole Qin family was at home, divided into their rooms. The wife called Qin Tian, inviting him to bed. The girl looked great and her blue eyes shone like precious stones. Qin Tian joined his beloved, hugging his wife and covering her with a blanket on top. Slowly taking off his blue shirt, their contact became closer and more passionate every minute. At that time, children who were still awake noticed their parents passing by. Qin Hao and his older brother stood in the hallway and watched very quietly what was happening in his father and mother's room. The younger brother still did not understand much, so he was curious and asked Qin Feng why his father was squeezing his mother. Gathering all the seriousness, Qin Feng thought about how it would be better to answer his brother and not make him say too much in the future. Feng said that mom and dad are currently training to maintain their strength together. Little brother Hao still had a grudge against his father and wanted to take revenge on him in some way. Then he asked Qin Feng what would happen if he interrupted dad's training, whether the father would have the strength to punish and beat his youngest son. The elder brother was a little confused by such a question and awkwardly looked at Hao. Qin Feng understood that the villain's glasses, of course, are very good and tempting, but if the father is interrupted at the moment, then he will definitely not stand on ceremony with anyone. While Feng stood and pondered the previous question, about to answer Hao, the younger brother happily said that his Qin Feng did not say anything, which means that he silently agreed with him. The next minute, Qin Hao had already run into his parents' room. The older brother's face was filled with horror, because he understood that if his brother interrupted his father now, he would be so angry that he would whip the boy as much as ever before. In this case, Feng will not be able to earn villain points for a very long time. Qin Hao ran into the room with a ringing cry, interrupting his father from his studies. His brother's face was as happy as possible, because at that time he believed that he had adequately avenged his dad, who had beaten him for pranks in the last couple of months. Qin Tian was greatly shocked by the arrival of his youngest son, uttering a cry of surprise. There can be no dispute that the moment was the most inappropriate. Qin Feng was very worried about brother Hao, realizing that if he had answered earlier, he would have been able to stop him. Being around the corner of the wall, the elder brother understood how ridiculous the situation that had occurred. Qin Hao stood in front of his parents with his hands on his side and watched the saddened father's reaction. Hao understood that he had caught him by surprise and was unlikely to face punishment now. But Qin Feng perfectly understood how all this would end, so using his speed, the guy left the house very quickly, running out into the street. Only a flash of blue light remained in the corridor of the Qin family's house, which soon disappeared. The elder brother was going down the stairs to the courtyard of the estate. The system began to issue notifications that Qin Feng received 500 villain points twice for his brother's offense, and another 1,000 for his father, also chosen by heaven, being touched to the quick. Suddenly, a great idea came to the young gentleman's head regarding his brother's offense. After all, if you regret the rod, then the child will grow up spoiled, and if he is not whipped, he will not understand. Besides, my brother loves Feng very much and definitely won't blame him for anything. Half a month later, Qin Feng was lying leaning on a stone with a rather sad face. The guy was visited by thoughts that since the last time his brother interrupted Dad's workout, his ass still hasn't healed, and for half a month Feng hasn't received new villain points. While he was thinking where else to get new glasses, a silhouette of an animal with a sled behind appeared in the sky. The animal was burning with red fire, and in a clear sky it was very clearly visible. Qin Feng raised his head and watched the scene intently. The huge animal resembled a mixture of a lion and a dragon in one person. Flying with great speed, it carried behind it a certain car, on top of which was a man with long gray hair, and also behind the car silhouettes of a crowd of people could be seen. The young youth who was sitting at the top of the red and gold carriage was wearing a black robe and holding a long sword in the bosom of his right hand. Below, inside, a girl with green hair and a cute face was looking out of the window, but at that moment her face was worried about something. Qin Feng, looking up again, recognized those who had arrived in the valley of the Qin family. They were the Lin family from Tiangxin City, but the young master did not understand what they had forgotten here and why they had come to their land. The next second, a smile flashed across his face. The system issued an alert about the discovery of the heaven-chosen epic level. Qin Feng's face broke into a smile, because he was just worried that it wasn't the chosen one who would bring him the villain's glasses, and he was right there. It all happened half a month ago in the Imperial court of Dazia at the back of the mansion of the Lin family from Tiangxin City. A dark-haired man stood in front of a tower made of solid stone, with his hands behind his back. Something worried him very much. This man turned out to be Lin Hao, the head of the Lin family. He was making a small detour of his garden, conducting a dialogue with himself. The day before, he had learned that two chosen ones, and very powerful and unusual ones, had been born in the Qin family not so long ago. His two children, as well as Qin Tian's children, were chosen and played near a large oak tree. The girl's servant was older, with dark long hair like her father's and tall, and the girl was more like her mother, having her eyes. There was a belligerent shout and a knock on wood. The girl, following in the footsteps of her father, also tried to train more and harden her abilities to reach an epic level, being chosen by heaven. In the Lin family, children were also taught to harden themselves. The girl beat with such force that a small handful of leaves began to fall from the oak. Her court servant stood nearby and silently watched. He clearly saw that the girl has the power of the chosen one and she needs to continue to develop herself. Satisfied, the sister stopped beating the tree, threw her hands on her belt and asked the servant how he estimated her strength of the blow. The guy only emphasized again that the girl has an extraordinary gift 100%, and the girl will be able to break through pretty quickly. The father of the family still had a lot of thoughts in his head. Completely immersed in himself, he recalled the Qin family, whose children all haunted him with their successes. Sighing, he headed towards his daughter and her new servant, who always followed her. The girl turned to her dad to explain the reason why she was making such loud sighs. She was a worried father and did not want to see him upset about anything, because he was always kind to her and loved his daughter very much. The girl's father broke into a smile that slightly covered his eyes. After thinking a little about how to start a dialogue with his daughter, and in order to answer her, initially he decided to just say that he had had too much lunch and ate too much, so now he sighs. But then he decided to explain what was bothering him. He turned to Zinner, telling her that he had learned a rumor that the Qin family's eldest son was growing up to be a very prominent young man, and he was also talented and very gallant. There is no one who can surpass him in tempering. Then the father explained that the young man Qin Feng at his age had already managed to break through to the limit of Superman, and before him, no one really could do it. The Pope added that Zinner would not like to form an alliance between the families and become his wife. The girl's face changed and she became really furious, loudly shouting to her father that she was still a child. The girl clenched her fists and continued to get angry. The father was confused, then explained that early love also has a place to be and dad will succeed. Zinner continued to shout at the whole courtyard, explaining to her father that she would rather live as an old maid until her death, go blind, lose her Kai, than marry the eldest son of the Qin family. The girl is upset that her father is trying to make a choice for her. The Qin family warmly welcomed the Lin family from Tiangxian. This was Zinner and Qin Feng's first meeting. The young gentleman appeared in all his glory, and after seeing the guy live, the girl took back her words, because Feng was just beautiful. Noticing how Zinner was standing and just eating Qin Feng with his eyes, the guy was slightly embarrassed and opened his eyes wide. Just like the girl, began to stare back. Coming a little closer to get to know each other, the young man could not immediately find the words. Zinner thought that it was some kind of nonsense after all. And what if Qin Feng is so handsome? Isn't the guy trying to become her husband just because of his appearance? At that moment, she couldn't show that she really liked Feng. Suddenly the girl turned sharply to the guy, poking him with her finger. Her eyes, as green as her hair, were glowing with inner interest. She asked Qin Feng if he was really the one about whom there was so much talk and praise, about his strength. Qin Feng calmly turned to the girl and quietly said that it was so, it really was him. The chosen one who chose the path of the villain of fate, who managed to break through at such a young age through the limits that not even all adults can reach. Zinner called her assistant, who had previously been flying on the roof of the carriage, to her to introduce him to Qin Feng. The girl said that her new servant's name was Lin San and asked Feng if he would dare to fight with him to test himself. The head of the Lin family, hearing the dialogue that was going on between the children, turned to his daughter and told her to stop being rude to young Mr. Feng right now, because they are now with friends of their family and should be polite. Qin Feng looked at Lin San's servant, wondering if he was the chosen one after all or not. After all, due to the fact that Qin Hao was his own brother, Feng beat him half-heartedly every time, fearing that he would not be able to explain himself to his parents later. The boy smiled, remembering that in 5 years he had dropped out as many as 240,000 villain points, thanks to various pranks, using his brother Hao. And now, when neither his relative nor even his friend gets into his hands, he cannot be careful here. Lin Tian's father slightly changed his face after the request of the head of the Lin family to his daughter, asking not to be rude to her. Qin Tian was slightly annoyed by what he was asking, but he himself does the same and still does not stop himself. Gently slapping his eldest son on the shoulder, Qin Tian told Qin Feng not to play with them, then to show the agility, speed and strength of the young man in front of the guests of the Qin family courtyard. The father wanted the guests to envy Qin Tian's firstborn. Qin Feng looked at his father approvingly. Of course, he will not mind showing what the eldest child of their family is capable of. The elders, taking the girl by the arm, stepped aside a little, waiting for the fight that will happen among the youth. Lin San approached Qin Feng, holding a sword in his hands. He told the young gentleman that he was very grateful to him for giving him the opportunity to learn something from such a great talent. Crossing his arms at his chest, the servant Zinner bowed. A bright blue aura began to appear around Qin Feng, and leaves from the trees began to gather around the young master. At this time, he himself fixed his gaze on Lin San, who was standing in front of him, who was already preparing to draw his sword. The first technique that Qin Feng wanted to test his opponent with was the spinning of a falling leaf that his great-grandfather had once shown him. The guy had been tempering this skill for a long time after that, so he was confident in it. The leaves rushed towards Lin San. They moved quickly, and the servant even managed to get a little confused, but gathering his thoughts in time, the young man took out his sword and reflected the leaves, which were flying like shurikens surrounded by a blue aura. After repelling the first attack, he swung his blade, making a swift dash towards the spinning of the falling leaf and cut through the blue aura, which completely stopped the flying leaves. It couldn't be said that it took Lin Zion a lot of effort. The young man stopped. His black cloak was completely cut by leaves, which still managed to get the servant. But the body itself was completely unharmed, and Zinner was jubilant on the sidelines, shouting that it looked very cool. Qin Feng himself noticed that Lin Zion's sword spends quite a lot of Kai itself, which is very good for the young master. He felt that after the first attack, he should immediately proceed to the second one to check whether the servant's strength had not run out. Qin Feng's next attack was to strike a serene ghost. Clenching his fists tightly, the young man rushed to the chosen epic level with the words that he would take his life for the mistake made by the servant. Lin San got ready. Putting the sword under the blow, the flash of the blue aura of the Kai of the villain of fate began to create an explosive wave around the guys. The blow was incredibly strong, and Lin San himself had never reflected such a thing before, which he was very surprised at, but did not show in any way. The resulting explosion brought Qin Feng only 200 villain points for hitting the Chosen of Heaven. But this was too little, because he earned points from Brother Hao for lighter offenses. Everything was covered by the rising dust from which Feng emerged. And when the clouds of dust dissipated completely, then Lin San became visible, who stood without moving without a single wound on his body. He continued to hold the sword tightly, showing Qin Feng with his whole appearance that he was not going to give up so easily. Qin Feng himself can't believe his eyes. Is this guy really as good and strong as he is? Previously, he had not been given the opportunity to fight with other chosen ones in full contact, so the young master was surprised. Jumping back, the young master landed on the ground again and continued to look at the servant who belongs to Xin. Qin Feng didn't know what to expect from the guy, because so far he had only shown excellent defense. Xin stood behind and tried to support her servant as much as she could, shouting that he was doing well, and that he should teach the young master a good lesson. Xin added that she wanted Lin San to do it for her. Qin Feng understood that he could not lose face in front of the Lin family, letting down his reputation, because he really is a real talent. He had the idea that this is how villains feel when they are suppressed by the main character. But there was one more trick that Qin Feng left for last, something he didn't want to use in the first place. Stretching his hand up, the young master shouted that he was summoning the great swords. The blue flames surrounded him again. From heaven, 9 streams of very powerful force rushed to the young man. Everyone raised their heads up to see what Qin Feng had just summoned and what his rival Lin San was facing. It suddenly dawned on Lin's father. He realized, with his eyes wide open, which swords the boy had called for. After all, these were the legendary 9 swords of Chang Kun, which were previously presented to Fang by the great Emperor Dazia himself. Father Lin said that he had also heard that His Imperial Majesty Dazia had been deceived by the unscrupulous heir of the Qin family for the 9 swords of Changware and the heaven-given bauble, but he thought that it was all just rumors, and it turned out to be true. For Qin Feng's father, it sounded like a compliment, although the head of the Lin family wanted to hurt him more with it. Qin Tian only laughed, once again remembering the face of Emperor Dazia when he parted with his precious box of swords. Lin Hao continued to wag his tongue, saying that he did not want to offend Qin Tian by also calling him his matchmaker. But this already slightly inflamed Tian, to which he immediately put forward his indignation, clarifying why Lin Hao calls him his matchmaker. While the heads of the families were having their dialogue, discussing Qin Feng, the young master himself, being on the ground, standing firmly on his feet, he directed the swords of Chang Kun, ordering them to line up together. The boy held up 2 fingers as a gesture to the swords. The 9 blades began to circle around, gradually merging into one superb sword that the rest of those present had never seen. Qin Feng also twisted his arm, ordering the swords to accelerate, for he was already ready to kill. The blade that resulted from the fusion of all of Chang Kun's legendary 9 swords was simply godlike. The steel glittered, blinding the eye, the golden hilt and engraving shimmered in the sun, and the red stones resembling garnet gave luxury. Qin Tian, watching the scene intently, broke into a smile, not missing the opportunity to speak positively about his son so that Lin Hao could hear it. Tian believed that his son had all the makings to become an emperor. It was not for nothing that His Imperial Majesty gave him his 9 Chang Kun swords, which had previously been collected by Dazia with great difficulty. Qin Feng grabbed the blade in his hands and was ready to deliver another blow, only this time a crushing one. Lin San took a step forward, showing only a smirk on his face. He told Feng that even if he had the blessing of the divine swords, he was still not an equal opponent. The guy looked too confident. Lin San was ahead of Qin Feng and launched the attack first. He called on the determination of Chang Kun's sword, believing that the young master would definitely not be able to repel such a reception, and it was time to teach him a lesson by finishing this duel. The servant sent an aura outburst towards Feng. The elders couldn't believe their eyes. They both realized what everything was leading to, and Qin Tian caught himself in fear for his son. Frowning, he shouted that he would not allow this to continue and would immediately come to his son's aid. The determination of the sword and the 9 swords are both descended from the cold weapon god Chang Kun. Both were originally one weapon, complemented and supported each other, but today they met in this way in the hands of belligerents. The father also thought that although Feng, of course, has a heavenly gift, but he is only 8 years old, how will he be able to resist the determination of Chang Kun's sword? After all, this is a very ancient power, and if it gets to the boy, it can leave consequences. Qin Tian rushed to Qin Feng, shouting that his father was already rushing to help and would now help the boy cope with the reception that Lin San had directed at him. Qin Feng continued to stand calmly in place and watch as the blow approached. Waving his hand in the direction of his father running towards him, Feng rather abruptly, but very clearly, told him to stop where he was and move back. The young master of the Qin family did not want anyone to interfere with him at such a crucial moment. Qin Tian, obeying his son, instantly returned back to the place where Lin Hao was standing. It was clear that the head of the Qin family was pleased and continuing to be proud of his son. He said that it seemed to him that his own son abhors his father. Raising his left hand to the sword that was the result of the fusion of 10, Qin Feng began to prepare to launch a counterattack, and he already knew what kind of technique it would be. It was only necessary to charge the sword a little with his Kai power of the villain of fate. Swinging with all the strength he had, Qin Feng shouted that he was drawing a sword for the execution of heaven. Jumping up on the spot and spreading his arms to the sides, he sent a wave of blue aura of his Kai in response to Lin San's blow to block the attack. The orange wave of Chang Kun's sword determination strike was already approaching Qin Feng, but he still managed to respond, and his wave of heaven's divine execution was already rushing to meet the Kai that Lin San released. Colliding with each other, the two blows formed an explosion of tremendous force. The ground under the collision began to scatter in all directions. The fire burned the grass and trees nearby. The blast wave rapidly began to develop in all directions. Faced with a strong current of wind, Lin Hao can't believe his eyes. He still couldn't figure out how Qin Fei had repelled such a powerful attack by his servant Lin San. Wrinkling his face, but not closing his eyes, he continued to watch. The young children of Qin Hao and Lin Xin'er grabbed their fathers so that they would not be blown away by the powerful air flow formed by the blast wave. They were both terrified and shouted loudly while the heads of their families stood resolutely and unshakably. When the explosion disappeared and the dust dispersed, Lin San stopped in surprise and looked at the silhouette of the Qin boy, who was still firmly standing on his feet. He couldn't believe that Fang had managed to parry the move, because he thought it was impossible. Suddenly, Chang Kun's sword, which Lin San owned, began to crumble into small metal fragments, flying away in the wind at the same second. The guy stood, being in complete shock from what was happening, because this sword was one of his most precious things. As he stood holding his falling apart blade, Qin Feng moved towards him. The system issued a new notification with congratulations, adding up as many as 10,000 points for making the truth-seeking heart of the chosen one of heaven crack. Then the young gentleman abruptly had a grin on his face. He thought at that moment that if 100,000 villain points were credited to him for some crack, that how much he would be given for piercing Lin San's heart through, maybe several million. Rushing to the servant Lin Xin'er, the boy with a menacing face announced that it was too easy for him and now he would deal with Lin San, who raised his sword at him, piercing him with a blow to the heart. After striking his first blow, he barely touched Lin San's left shoulder, slicing through his black robe and the flesh that was hidden behind the clothes. The young man bled, and the system continued to accrue 500 villain points for each wound of the chosen one. The next blow landed on Lin San's cheek. In a thirst to get his cherished points, which he needed for so long, because his brother was beaten by his father, Qin Feng continued to shred Lin San with his sword, striking him in the leg and back as well. Suddenly, a hand rushed to the young man and grabbed him by the collar, pulling him away from the defeated Lin San. It was Qin Feng's father who wanted to stop the massacre that his son had arranged. One blow was already enough. Qin Tian told his son that it was time to stop all this. The boys played around, quarreled, but it's not worth destroying friendship because of this, because families value the relationships they have with each other and they don't need a war. Lin Hao also joined in the defense of his courtier, agreeing with the words of the head of the Qin family. He said that it was time to immediately stop this rude boy and he would not let Lin San finish off, no matter how much talent he had. After everything stopped and the boys who had quarreled with each other went to the sides, Lin Hao approached Qin Tian and invited him to step aside for a couple of minutes so that he could share his lucrative offer with the head of the Qin family. The men happily moved away from the children to walk around the yard, trying to give way to each other as a sign of respect. Then Lin Hao shared his theory regarding the conclusion of an alliance between families, uniting their children into a family. Qin Tian laughed happily. He was pleased to hear the proposal from the head of the Lin family. In a ringing voice, he said that he did not dare to refuse, because Lin San was also worthy of being his son, so it would be more correct to conclude an alliance. At the same time, Qin Feng was already approaching Lin Xin'er standing in the outer courtyard. The girl, raising her hand to her chest, said that the young gentleman was simply magnificent, and what he showed was a really cool sight. But the young master was not interested in Lin Hao's daughter at all. He continued to look at the Heaven's Chosen epic level, with whom he had just fought. He had earned several thousand villain points, and without spending a lot of Kai. Lin Xin'er continued trying to build a dialogue with young Mr. Feng, but he did not even take his eyes off Lin San standing next to him. Qin Feng very passively tried to keep up the conversation, but could not stop thinking about glasses. And yet one of the bright thoughts that interested the gentleman came to his mind, and he, sticking his index finger into the servant Lin Xin'er, asked if she could order him to play with Qin Feng often when he wanted to. Lin Xin'er was shocked by what she heard. She couldn't believe that, having finally made up his mind and invited young Master Qin Feng, he started talking to her about playing with her servant. After all, he was not married, and she is quite beautiful. Offended, Lin San turned around and started walking away from Qin Feng. He could not understand what happened and why the girl behaved like that. Maybe he said something wrong, but everything seemed to be quite normal. Twisting his face into a questioning grimace, Qin Feng thought hard about why the girl suddenly began to behave in this way. Because before that everything was completely different. Raising his hand, he thought at first to stop her, but it was too late. By evening, everyone had already gathered inside the mansion. The Lin family, who arrived from a neighboring city, was placed in the living room. Suddenly, a scream rang out in the room. It was Lin, who was dissatisfied with her father's act, because he promised her to another son of the Qin family. The girl did not stop her hysterics on stormy emotions, continuing to scream, asking Lin Hao for what reason he married Lin for the second son of the Qin family, Qin Hao. After all, initially the conversation was about the older boy, Qin Feng. The father, not understanding the reason for his daughter's discontent, replied to her that earlier she did not want to marry the eldest son at all, and now she is outraged by the fact that she was promised to another son of the family. Looking at his daughter, he waited for at least some adequate explanation. The girl was shocked by the question, which reminded her about the eldest son of the Qin family. She was embarrassed, because her father might think that she liked Qin Feng after all, and then everyone in the Qin mansion would know about it. Shouting out that she really did not want to marry him and she did not like him, the girl deceived her father, because after their duel with Lin San, the eldest son of the Qin family showed himself very worthy and powerful, and even was handsome with all this. Lightly clasping her father's hand and clinging to it, the girl calmed down and pointed out the fact that she was 2 years older than Qin Hao's second son. She was scared that if everyone found out about it, then everyone would laugh at dad and their family. The father laughed loudly, stroking his daughter on the head. He said that there was nothing to laugh at, because now, on the contrary, novels between an older girl and a younger guy are very popular, so the girl cannot worry. Pouting her lips, Lin did not stop insisting on her own, because she had to somehow persuade her father so that the engagement with Qin Hao would not take place. She said that if the wife is older than her husband, then there will definitely be those people who will stipulate their family. There will be rumors that the Lin family handed over their daughter to the Qin family to climb up, and also that the Qin family does not want to marry their heaven-chosen Qin Feng to a daughter from the Lin family. My father shouted that this was nonsense and would not allow such conversations. He added that those who still dare to spread gossip about his daughter Lin, he will pay a lot and his whole family will also be destroyed. He was screaming so hard that people passing in the corridor could hear it. Lin started shouting back, urging her father to speak softly, because everyone can hear their dialogue. He agreed and told his daughter that he would keep his voice down. The girl, crossing her arms, summed up that she would not marry Qin Hao. The father seems to have understood why all these tantrums that he is now listening to from Lin's daughter. Surprised, he asked her if she liked Qin Feng or if she just didn't want to marry Hao's youngest son because of the age difference. The girl turned away and said that this was nonsense, because Qin Feng initially seemed to her too narcissistic and pompous fool. How could she like him? Qin Hao smiled and told his daughter Lin that in that case the matter was settled and he perfectly understood what his daughter wanted. Agreeing with her, the father announced that they would marry the daughter to the chosen one of heaven in some other family. Her father's answer morally finished off Lin, and she ran out of the room with tears in her eyes. She told Lin Hao that he did not love his daughter at all and did not understand her at all. Surprised, Lin Hao did not understand the reason for the resentment of his daughter, who had just run away, thinking about what is going on with her and why the girl has been behaving like this in the last couple of days. Qin Feng was sitting in the outer courtyard, puzzled by the upcoming marriage with Lin. He couldn't find the right words to describe his feelings and emotions. He had only one phrase in his head, but he just didn't know whether to say it or not. While the young master was sitting next to his brother Qin Hao, who was building a tower of stones and trying to introduce his brother to the game. There were still dialogues about the upcoming union of two families, where fathers would unite children by marriage. Exhaling, young Qin Feng thought that he had had enough of love, because it was bitter enough, so it would be better to do without it altogether. Moreover, the gentleman is still young and has completely different hobbies and things in his head that he plans to do. Looking in the direction where Lin San was standing, Qin Feng thought that right now, only Lin's servant would be enough for him. The chosen one will be able to give him much more in the form of villain points than marriage at that age. Lin San stood with his arms crossed next to Lin Hao. The young man kept thinking about how he could give up the duel to Qin Feng, who was even younger than him. Then he got the feeling that someone was watching him now. Running outside, Lin retreated to a clearing that was located not so far from the Qin family's palace. Sitting down on the fresh summer grass, the girl plucked a yellow flower and began to guess at its petals. With the last torn petal, divination told the girl that Qin Feng did not love her, which caused Lin to change her face. The girl wanted everything to be absolutely the opposite, because she wants the young gentleman to like her. Lin threw the flower that was empty of petals to the side, disappointed in the prediction she received. The girl thought that such a way to determine Qin Feng's liking was very stupid and she needed to take everything into her own hands. The young lady of the Lin family got to her feet and confidently, with a firm step, headed out of the garden into the courtyard of the mansion, where the children of the Qin family were playing right now. Along the way, she pondered what she would say to Qin Feng when she saw him. Approaching the courtyard, the girl saw her father, who was sitting over a cup of tea with Qin Tian, and their sons were nearby. Qin Feng informed his father that they were going to play with Lin San, and heard it. Joining the conversation of the two young men, the girl asked her servant Lin San where he was going and for what reason he did not invite the young lady with them. The guys stared at Lin in surprise. Qin Tian and Lin Hao, paying attention to Lin's desire to spend time with the guys, thought that this might be a chance to bring their children closer and give them time to chat. Both fathers still counted on their union. The head of the Lin family said that the idea of walking together was very good and ordered Lin San to take Lin and the second son of the Qin family, that is, the eldest, for a walk. Lin San was obliged to protect them on the walk. Qin Feng appreciated the support of his parents. Thinking that he was actually getting two favorites for the price of one, he broke into a smile. Only the girl was still a ballast, but what could be done? Lin San was too expensive. All the children, under the close supervision of Lin San, headed towards the city. Their plans were to walk through its streets and visit several outlets and shops. Lin San stretched out his hand and let his mistress go ahead. When the whole company was in the city, the first thing they did was go to the ancient market. Lin San stood at the counter admiring the goods, and Qin Feng noticed everything where the Chosen One directed his attention. After all, usually the Chosen Ones choose the best artifacts, and Qin Feng thought that any product that Lin San wanted would be purchased faster by the young master. The first of them was the Grass of the Celestials. The system congratulated its owner and credited 300 villain points for the stolen artifact from under Lin San's nose. Qin Feng realized that with such actions he would finally be able to start replenishing his stock of points in order to further harden himself. Then the following interesting artifact fell into the eyes of the Chosen One by heaven, with which he would like to get acquainted closer. Lin San started to pull his hand across the counter towards the item. Having almost reached the blue vial, which was a very rare elixir of immortality, his hand grabbed only empty air, because the object was already in the hands of the young master. He showed it to the merchant and bought the elixir. Having received another 300 villain points for another theft, Qin Feng, standing in front of the servant, laughed maliciously. He thought that he seemed to have enough Lin San to have a good time in the city. The servant was disappointed, turning around and walking away from the young gentleman who was standing and continued to grin at Lin San. He thought that Qin Feng was behaving very strangely. The young gentleman was about to follow when he was interrupted. Lin literally flew up to the young man standing on the spot and asked him if Qin Feng wanted to go for a walk with a girl. Her eyes were burning, and her cheeks were covered with a red and quite noticeable blush. Slightly pushing the girl aside, the young gentleman rejected Lin's invitation and told her that she was only blocking his way. Qin Feng returned his gaze to the departing Chosen One and followed him. Lin became very furious at the words she heard from Qin Feng's mouth. At that moment, the young man greatly infuriated the young lady because she herself took the first step, offered a walk together, and he did not even look at her. Qin Feng caught up with Lin San and continued to ask him about all sorts of artifacts. Lin froze in place and looked at the gentleman with eyes full of love. Although he infuriated her, she thought the young man was very brave and handsome. Continuing their walk around the city, the children, under the supervision of Lin San's servant, followed further along the shopping area. Qin Feng was very pleased that they were spending time and walking, so he also gets villain points by pestering the Chosen One. The absolutely carefree gentleman went on, as at that time the attention of the Lin house servant, and the youngest child of the Qin family was riveted on a certain very ancient artifact that resembled a box made of dark stone. Lin San saw Qin Hao also looking at this box and realized that this time he would not give up something interesting and rare to the spoiled children of the Qin family. Turning to the child, the servant glared at the child. There was an almost instantaneous heat of emotions between them because of the artifact. Qin Hao bared his teeth and frowned and told Lin San that he was the first to see the box, and Lin San claimed that he was the first. While the guys were standing and fiercely proving to each other who was the first, Qin Feng heard their conversation and understood what it was about. At the same moment, he rushed towards the counter using his magical speed. When he approached the merchant, Qin Feng asked permission to take it in his hands to carefully examine this thing. The merchant said that it was worth 1,000 spirit stones, but if the master wishes, he will give in and sell at a discount. When Lin San and Qin Hao, who were arguing, paid attention to Qin Feng, it was already too late for them, because he had bought this artifact. Although he didn't know what its value was, Qin Feng understood its uniqueness, which attracted the two chosen ones. Lin San jumped up to the young master, stretching out his hand with the intention of stopping the merchant and canceling the purchase. He asked Qin Feng if he was haggling and why he bought it so quickly. Grinning, the gentleman said that such a price was nothing to him. Then suddenly the system issued a new notification that by buying the box, Qin Feng spoiled the fate of the chosen one by heaven, for which the young master got a chance to play the lottery once. That's when he realized that the box was really an expensive treasure. Pulling out the box in front of him and pointing it straight at the sun's rays, Qin Feng began to carefully familiarize himself with the thing he had purchased. He was looking for at least something that could tell and reveal the true value of the item. After seeing her from all sides, Qin Feng clutched his chest, making a snide grimace. He thought that it was rather inconspicuous and in his opinion just a trinket. How could two chosen ones have fallen for her, and most importantly why? Suddenly, his brother Hao flew up to Qin Feng from behind. The boy gently grabbed his brother's hand and slightly adding pity in his voice asked his older brother to give him this artifact. At first, the young gentleman thought that this way he could find out the use of the box, and then it just dawned on him. After all, if Qin Feng is really not such a bad villain and sometimes still does good deeds, and also he has a conscience, then perhaps he will be able to go through the path of heaven's chosen one and be kind. Qin Feng turned to Hao and raised the box over his brother's head and announced that he had just bought this broken pot for 888 spirit stones, but as Hao's brother, he would remove 2 8s and lend it to him for a few days for the remaining one. Qin Hao knew that his brother would make concessions to him, because, as before, he always supported the baby and helped him, even when his father strongly scolded the guy. Smiling, the boy shouted that he agreed to his older brother's proposal. Qin Feng smiled again, hiding the cunning in his face. Taking out a bag with a box from under his clothes, he said that he always keeps his word and sells an artifact for only 800 spirit stones. He noticed that it wasn't that expensive. Holding out a white handkerchief, in which the black stone magic box was already wrapped, Qin Feng told his brother to accept it as a gift and an indicator of love for the younger. Hao should not forget this kindness. Satisfied, Qin Hao accepted the gift from his brother without hiding his joy at all, clutching the box to his chest. Smiling, Qin Hao said that Qin Feng is very good and the boy considers his brother the best person in the world. Looking into the eyes of his joyful brother, Qin Feng at that moment thought what a fool he was and how stupid he was growing up. After putting the bag of stones in his bosom, he noticed a new notification about the accrual of 500 villain points for cheating Hao. While the children of the Qin family were making their deal, Lin San was already standing at another counter, asking the price of another beautiful item from her owner. The elder brother immediately noticed this and realized that now he could certainly miss something. Immediately jumping up to Xin Lin's servant with the speed of the wind, Qin Feng put his hand on Lin San's shoulder and said over his back that he wanted to buy the thing that the shopkeeper had just shown the young man. A cold sweat broke out on Lin San's face. He was already gradually beginning to shake with discontent, because of the arrogance of the children of the Qin family, he absolutely could not calmly look at and purchase anything. Such surveillance of him seemed very strange. Lin San also thought that the eldest son of the Qin family likes to spy on him and instantly appears behind the servant's back, as if by magic. Qin Feng was pleased, because he had not missed more than one opportunity to steal Lin San. Walking up to the next counter with various artifacts that covered the entire table, Lin San made sure that Qin Feng was again following the servant on his heels. Looking around him, the young man guessed what might happen when trying to buy. Lin San seems to have guessed what the young master is trying to achieve. The servant began to stretch out his hand to the standing bell, continuing to observe Qin Feng's reaction. The man was standing behind him, his eyes burning with curiosity. As Lin San thought, as soon as he managed to touch the thing to which he stretched out his hand, the young gentleman immediately shouted from behind his back at the moment he bought the thing that the chosen one liked. The servant's guess was completely confirmed. Turning around, Lin San stared blankly at Qin Feng, who was standing contentedly and leaning on the counter, asked the chosen one why he did not buy things he was interested in. The servant frowned, realizing that he would not wait for peace. Folding his hands, leaning his fist against his straight palm, Lin San bowed to the young master and said that he had some other things to do, so he was leaving the boys. Saying goodbye, the dark-haired guy disappeared into thin air. Qin Feng watched Lin San disappear, who in theory could still bring him a lot of villain points on this walk. Then the boy thought that the servant's reaction was somehow strange, and in general, like his mistress, he is a strange person too. When everyone had already returned back to the palace, Lin invited Qin Feng to walk around the courtyard, and this time the guy did not refuse. The girl shared that something has been going wrong with Lin San lately. The servant is not feeling well. They were just planning to go to the market again, only the next day. Lin, assuming that the servant would not recover the next day, offered her company so that Qin Feng would not go to the market all alone. The guy smiled, crushing a blade of grass gathered on the field with his teeth, and told the girl that he might not even think about it. He is not interested in her at all, and Qin Feng noticed that he only wants Lin San and no one else. The girl was so crazy about the young gentleman that she found an excuse for every answer he gave. Watching him go, she thought that he wasn't afraid to fight back, and he didn't run after skirts. Just the best of the best guys she knew. Lin San was in the house and overheard the conversation between Lin and Qin Feng. Hugging himself by the elbows, the guy thought what the phrase of the gentleman could mean when he said that he wanted only Lin San and only him, because it was very strange from the outside. It was already dark in the yard. It was quite clear and bright stars could be seen in the sky, which cover the entire surface of the air. The hour was late, and the ashes of a burning candle were rising in one of the rooms. It was Lin San's room. Sitting all alone, Lin San hugged his sword of the great blacksmith Chang Kun tightly. He continued to be slightly shaken by the conversation he had heard this afternoon from his mistress and the boy. Qin Feng, infuriated the servant, did not give him peace. Further, the thoughts of the young servant became much deeper, because in fact he just wanted to become the best servant the world has ever seen, and not some kind of obedient boy of some master who has a desire for him. Very soon, the Qin and Lin families announced their engagement to the whole world. Thereby the Qin family enters into an official alliance with the city of Tiangxin. People gathered at the canvas. It was written on it that Lin stands in alliance with the second son of the Qin family. So, the Lin family was already going to return to their home, having had enough of their newly made relatives, which the Qin family became due to the union of two children. Lin Hao stood and said goodbye to his brother Qin Tian. The sons of the Qin family were also standing nearby, also escorting the Lin family home. Qin Feng looked sadly at the silhouettes that stood in the window of the carriage. From now on, instead of 2 cores, he has only 1 left to search for artifacts. After all, both Qin Hao, his brother, and Lin San's servant, as we know, are chosen by heaven, so necessary for Qin Feng's development. And they are both cores, individual and different, but when there are 2 of them, the guy develops much faster. Lin San stood there and didn't understand why Feng was staring at him like that and why he had such a sad look. The young servant never figured out the secret of the young master and did not understand why he behaved so strangely throughout the visit of the Lin family. Lin bent down slightly and saw Lin San looking out the window and blushing slightly. The young man changed a little in his face, as if something even embarrassed him. The lady began to look for the reason and also turned towards the window of the car. There she found Qin Feng standing on the platform, and just as Lin San was watching the guys leaving very closely, she saw that the young master was sad about something. Perhaps he would miss the Lin family a lot. The girl smiled as she continued to look at Qin Feng. She was pleased that she, as she thought at the time, was able to make such an impression on the young gentleman, because for sure he was looking at her at that moment. A little later, when the Qin family escorted the Lin family back home, everyone returned to their palace and dispersed to their rooms. The weather was incredible outside. There was warm sun and clear sky, which is why many gathered in the garden after lunch. But Qin Feng was a little carried away by something else, and he was not particularly interested in the weather outside the window yet. Running into his room, the young gentleman sat down comfortably on the floor and opened the window of his development system. In just a few days, he managed to squeeze 15,000 villain points out of him, so he also got a chance to play the lottery as a bonus when he bought that strange box on the trading floor. Right now he was going to play it. Filled with anticipation, Qin Feng smiled and ran his tongue over his lips. The young master was beyond patience, considering the possible options for gifts that he could win in this lottery. I wanted, of course, something cool, as always. After taking part in this lottery, Qin Feng spun the wheel and stared intently, without taking his eyes off for a second, continued to watch the arrow, which was moving at a breakneck speed at first, but gradually slowed down. After about 2 minutes, she stopped spinning and stopped at one of the receptions. Qin Feng moved closer to see his prize. It was written on the wheel that the Lord had fallen to the Dharma of the divine level. It was a mighty dragon of the sky. Combined with the dragon pattern, it can summon a divine level Dharma. The dragon is the sworn enemy of evil spirits, and also strengthens the protection of the owner and recognizes people and evil spirits. After sitting down, Qin Feng began concentrating to absorb the heavenly dragon Kai and study the divine level Dharma he had won. As soon as he closed his eyes, he found himself in the middle of a stone wasteland, and the golden scales of a snake appeared from above. The young man, joining his 2 hands in a sacred gesture, hovered in the air, being among the rocks. He knew that in no case should the process be interrupted, because then he might lose the opportunity to study this divine technique. The dragon was getting closer and closer to Qin Feng. His eyes burned with a bright fire. His mouth was full of white, sharp and shining teeth. The entire body of the dragon snake was surrounded by fire, and the young master could feel the warmth coming from the dragon well. After spinning a little over the head of the chosen one, the fiery serpent swooped down sharply, gaining a crazy speed of falling. Qin Feng raised his head, watching this flame rush towards him, and waited for what would happen next. When the dragon approached a distance of only a meter or half from the guy, it opened its mouth wide, as if it wanted to swallow the boy whole. Qin Feng slightly covered his face, raising his hands up, as the heat was already unbearable. The dragon, continuing to fly towards the young master, began to narrow and pierce Qin Feng's chest with a thin arrow. The boy began absorbing his power, absorbing the heavenly Kai of the mighty serpent and being filled with the legacy of ancient knowledge. After the young man clenched his teeth and let this flaming snake inside him, his eyes opened. Clutching his chest, Qin Feng continued to experience pain, but also a fiery heat inside himself. It was very hard, and the guy needs to come to his senses. Turning his head, he saw that the golden dragon patterns were now emblazoned on his clothes. They were everywhere, both on the light part of the shirt and on the back, as well as on the pants. The boy remembered that the pattern, together with determination, can trigger a god-level Dharma. Suddenly, the boy spread his arms wide and shouted, summoning a powerful dragon. Qin Feng really wanted to try out his technique right away, which he had learned. After all, suddenly he will have a new clash with Lin San. The fiery flame rose in a huge column and rushed upwards, breaking through the roof of the mansion of the Qin family house. The tiles, which had already been repaired several times after the appearance of 2 new chosen ones in this house, scattered again all over the yard. Qin Feng jumped to his feet and looked up and realized that he had gone a little too far and could not fully control the strength of this technique. Pieces of charred wood and sparks that were caused by the dragon's flames continued to fall from the ceiling. Convinced and appreciating the full scale of the tragedy, Qin Feng sat down on the floor again, completely ceasing to worry. He was not in any danger, and the guy realized that he would have to work hard. Having called the system, the young gentleman wished to raise the level. The system fulfilled the master's wish by transferring him to the 3rd heaven of the secret of the 33 heavenly creators. The pillar of flame rose again, making another hole in the roof of the Qin family mansion. The screams of the older family members could be heard in the corridor. Qin Feng's great-grandfather stood at the beginning of the corridor, pointing his finger at the pillar of fire that flew out of his grandson's room. He shouted his name, trying to call out to the boy, as at that time the father stood behind the grandfather, shocked by his son's breakthroughs. Great-grandfather, who dreamed of having a child from the strong and worthy legacy of the Qin family, understood that Fang would soon become his pride and challenger if he moved in the same direction of rapid development. My father was more worried than about the room that was damaged. The young man continued to sit in the room with his eyes closed. The system started notifying the gentleman that he broke into the 3rd heaven by spending 100,000 villain points, and also overcame the 2nd heaven of the Superman limit by spending another 30,000. Qin Feng was shocked by the number of points he had to spend on this transition, as much as 130,000, because they were like his hard-earned. The young man continued to be indignant, closing his eyes and frowning. He has lost almost all the points he has been able to earn lately, and where will he get new ones if Lin San has left? And Hao is closely monitored before the wedding. The great-grandfather stood in the house and moored so that the father of the family ran for the best wine that is only in the cellar of the Qin family. Today they will drink to Feng's health. Grandfather was 100 times more happy than his father. On the 2nd day, when the rumors of the engagement of Qin Hao and Sin Erlin spread to the rest of the cities, there was an uproar in the throne room of Emperor Dazia. Everyone was outraged that the imperial court had not noticed this before and that such an alliance was insidious. The courtiers stood in the middle of the hall and discussed the course of their actions. Someone suggested sending troops immediately and taking advantage of the fact that the union has not yet become stronger. They could have been destroyed with lightning speed, but the others began to contradict. During the heated discussions, one of the imperial courtiers stepped forward and addressed His Majesty Dazia. He offered peace talks. There have been a lot of strange phenomena in recent years, and the era of the great battle is approaching, so a quarrel should be avoided. A man standing nearby supported. They remembered the reforms of the Yinyu dynasty, which it underwent 100 years ago, and now it has become stronger and no longer hides its insidious plans. But here the question was about two chosen ones of heaven appearing at one time. The emperor was told that they were now the main enemies for their Dazia, and the emperor should take action. Dazia thought that if he wanted to fight back against Yinyu's invasion, he would need all the great Dazia families united together. Closing his eyes, he realized that at the same time, on the other side, the two chosen ones would have time to grow and get stronger, becoming big. The emperor thought that if a couple of chosen ones would come out of his house, there would be no need for this. The rumors quickly reached the walls of the Qin family. Father and great-grandfather sat at the head of the ceremony and asked the servant if the rumor that Dazia was planning an attack on their family was true. Qin Tian remembered and said that in truth they had formed an alliance with Tiangxin, and on the borders of the Yinyu Empire looks like a wolf. The imperial house of the Great Xia cannot help but see this and thus go to extreme measures. Great-grandfather, in turn, announced that his family is in the power of Dazia. When the boys grow up, they will be able to replace them on the throne, so they plan to strike quickly before the children become men. Therefore, lightning war is best. Qin Tian hit the table hard and shouted that his children, in order to become emperor, would lay down their lives if necessary. In this case, they will have to fight, because if they surrender, the children will simply be taken away by their families forever. Qin Feng, hearing the loud conspiracy of his family, stood and looked out through a small crack between the doors that he had opened himself. He did not want to give his life for the post of emperor, so he thought that he would have to make his feet if the war started. But then the young man realized that he definitely wouldn't do it. He will not leave his new family at such a difficult time and will not run away, but will be there and, if necessary, will definitely help repel any opponent who threatens them. Having gone into memories, Qin Feng realized that even though he was a time traveler, and he had not planned that he would fall in love so much, eventually one day softening his character, and then, according to the classics of the script, he would get into danger because of this. But during these 8 years that he spent in the Qin family, Feng became very attached to them. After all, this family loved and protected him, so it would simply be unfair to leave them to their fate, leaving them to solve problems alone. Then one of the brilliant ideas came, as Qin Feng himself thought at that moment. He opened his eyes wide, took his chin judiciously and shouted that he had come up with a solution to the problem that had formed with Dazia. Finally opening the door, the young gentleman ran into the room and immediately turned to his father and grandfather, wanting to share with them an idea by which the issue could be solved. Everyone present in the room turned very hastily to the boy. The father looked at his 8-year-old son, who flew into the room without knocking and told Qin Feng to leave now. But the great-grandfather left his father, ordering him to close his mouth himself. Great-grandfather was really crazy about his grandson. Smiling and closing his eyes in emotion, great-grandfather addressed everyone who sat in the council, announcing that if Qin Feng had come up with something, we have every right to tell and share it with everyone present. Feng looked at his grandfather with gratitude, and then said that if the reason was only that he and his brother came to this world and immediately upset the balance in it, then it could be eliminated, and the emperor would no longer feel threatened. Only it was necessary to come up with a way to hide them with their brother, during which there would be no point in continuing the war. Great-grandfather said that even if they hide the children now, Emperor Dazia will not go to the world anyway. The emperor will calm down only if the children are either captured by him and deprived of their lives or simply abandoned. Qin Feng listened attentively to his grandfather and realized that everything fell into place and he was ready to sharpen his thought. Pursing his eyebrows, the boy said from under his brows that then they would be abandoned, and in turn has a very rare artifact that Dazia does not know about. It would be possible to tear out the august bones of Qin Hao, breaking the old and creating a new one. Suddenly, Grandpa got up from his chair and looked at Qin Feng, who dared to suggest such a radical method. Unexpectedly for everyone, the wisest of the Qin family supported his grandson, saying that this method would do just fine. Qin Tian was almost paralyzed. He jumped up after his father and shouted to the whole palace that he was against it and would not allow such a trick to be pulled off with his youngest son. The discussion was gaining more and more heated momentum. Qin Tian began to explain that his son Hao is only 5 years old and he absolutely cannot go through such a thing at such a young age, because it can completely break the fragile psyche of the child and it is unknown what the consequences will be further. Grandfather objected that if Hao wanted to take the place of the August, he would not be able to rely on the August bones alone. In addition, we need a firm will, zeal, and all this is predetermined by the inscrutable fate of the child. Then Grandpa summed up that Hao could survive pulling out the August bones to hide. He has broken the old. He will create a new one and take the place of the August one. But then how can they hide Qin Feng himself, their eldest son? Feng continued that they would be able to create a rumor by spinning a theory around the envy of the eldest son of the Qin family to the younger. Because Hao was born chosen by heaven, so Feng would take the August bones from his brother with his own hands and leave the family when everyone found out. In that case, Elder Qin would get angry and banish Qin Feng from his family forever, and throughout ancient times, he will issue an order to kill the pest of the family. The father continued to stare in shock with his mouth open. The young man also said that if Qin Hao experiences severe pain after pulling out the August bones, then Qin Feng will experience it doubly both in body and soul, which will doom him to torment and a speedy end. After listening carefully to everything his son said, Qin Tian stood up and finally shouted that it was inhumane and the Qin family simply could not do such a thing. If Dazia wants war, then he will get it, because they are not afraid of the emperor. Bending down on one knee, Qin Tian took his eldest son by the shoulders and told Qin Feng not to worry, and the father would protect him and his brother, and also help. Even if he had to put down his old bones, he would still not let them part. But the young gentleman continued to insist on his own, saying that this was a matter of the brave, taking on notoriety. Qin Feng shouts that he is ready to take on such a burden for the sake of the family, and the system at that time gives pocket hosting for excessive hypocrisy. The great-grandfather admires his grandson, but nevertheless still tries to think everything over with a cool head on his shoulders. He told Feng that he was a good boy, but by doing as he suggests, the child does not understand at all what he is condemning himself to. Feng insists that he has no regrets. The precious sword becomes sharper due to turning, and the fragrance of flowers arises due to the harsh cold. If you can't survive the rain with the winds, then how to see a rainbow? Only efforts make a person successful. Feng no longer knew how much he could insist. He wanted to be allowed to pull out his brother's August bones as soon as possible, and he would complete the system's assignment by obtaining an invincible double pupil. The young gentleman already wants to leave the house faster. In the end, after weighing everything, the elder of the Qin family gives his consent to the plan that Qin Feng came up with. Having announced this to the entire court hall, a long and dead silence reigned, which everyone was afraid to interrupt. Qin Tian's eyes became as if empty. It was clearly visible, because after Qin Feng's great-grandfather supported him, Qin Tian opened his eyes wide, just stared at the elder, speechless from presenting the whole picture. Falling on his knees in front of the elder of the Qin family, Tian, holding back tears, begged him to find some alternative, because you can't limit yourself to just one option, especially if they respond with a Dazia war, they have every chance of winning. Qin Feng was really surprised by his father's reaction to what was happening. He did not expect that Qin Tian had such a soft heart and was not willing to sacrifice any of his children. Previously, the father had never revealed himself to Feng like that. But continuing to play his acting game, in which everyone present believed so far, Qin Feng turned away for a couple of seconds, pretending to wipe his tears. His image of a son who tries, sacrificing himself, to save the whole family lived firmly. The elder told Qin Tian that Feng had the best plan and would help the Qin family rise from the bottom. In the worst situation for them, they only need to sacrifice Qin Tian's eldest son Feng. The father continued to kneel, shouting that they were his children and he could not do this to them. Qin Feng walked up to Qin Tian and, taking his arm, began to lift the grieving father, explaining that a real man does not kneel. Looking directly into Qin Tian's eyes, Feng said that he was making a promise to his father that soon his son would return safely back home. They just need to wait until all the noise around the emperor is over. After picking up his father, and then climbing up after him, young Master Qin Feng turned his back on Qin Tian and began to walk away with the intention of going to the room where his brother was sleeping now. The father was calling his son, trying to stop him. Completely morally discouraged, Qin Tian watched his son leave the hall and go out into the courtyard. He kept mumbling the names of his sons, continuing to deny the reality that was about to happen. It is unclear what will happen next with his sons. Qin Feng went out into the outer courtyard of the mansion and walked towards his sleeping brother Hao's room. There was a terrible downpour outside, and a strong wind blew the leaves off the trees surrounding the estate of the Qin family. The weather seemed to feel a foregone conclusion. Qin Hao was sleeping peacefully in his bed. I do not expect absolutely anything bad, because he is at home in his fortress and who can harm him here? The elder brother closed the door behind him and walked towards the boy with his usual step. Hearing the patter of wet boots, Qin Hao began to wake up, rubbing his sleepy eyes. A couple of seconds after waking up, he recognized his older brother, who was standing by the bed with a very serious face. Outside the window at this time, the weather was getting worse. Lightning cut the sky with bright light, and a sound wave from thunder shook the glass. Qin Feng walked even closer to his brother and continued to stare at him, thinking about everything for the last time. Qin Hao spread his hands to the side and was ready to cheerfully greet his beloved brother, who decided to visit him in bad weather, probably worried that he could not sleep. The child was happy, but only for a moment. In one sharp, very fast movement, Qin Feng penetrated under Qin Hao's ribs, then slowly making his way to the vertebrae. Stunned, the younger brother only managed to open his eyes wide. The breath was taken away either from surprise or already from a blow. Qin Hao called his brother with a faded voice, not understanding what he was doing to him. But Qin Feng was cool-headed and walked firmly towards his goal without uttering a word. His face was terrifying at that moment. Finally breaking his vow of silence, Qin Feng said what he had come for. These were the august bones, and clutching them inside, Feng pulled his hand towards himself, taking out an essential part of this legendary artifact. After Feng got the bones, the system broke out in messages, assigning 80,000 points to the villain for wounding the chosen one, whose life is now hanging by a thread, as well as one lottery game for the august skeleton received. In addition, the main task was the reward that came last. After completing the epic assignment that determined Qin Feng's fate as a villain, he received invincible double pupils, with which the system congratulated the owner. Qin Feng's pupil really split, and his eyes burned with a bright orange fire, not burning the eyes themselves at all, which seemed very strange and similar to magic. The young master started shooting his eyes in all directions, determining their strength. There was a small thud, something fell to the floor, and when Qin Feng lowered his head, he saw a box that they had bought at a shopping mall in a nearby town fall out of Qin Hao's hands. Qin Feng couldn't immediately figure out what the legendary power of the invincible double pupils was, so he still tried to look around. Noticing the dark stone box, Qin Feng thought for a second. Stretching out his hand to her, the young master was thinking of appropriating an artifact that had recently attracted the attention of as many as 2 chosen by heaven in the market, so Feng thought that he might need it just in case. But then something held him back and he took his hand away from the box, squeezing it into a fist. No one knows what made Qin Feng stop and not take the box. Maybe some family feeling still played in his conscience. Qin Feng looked at his brother, who, having lost consciousness, covered in red spots, continued to lie on the bed. Qin Feng thought that he would leave this box to his stupid brother in memory of himself, so that he would never forget his brother's feat. Turning around, he firmly grabbed the august bones that he had just taken from his brother and moved back with them, in the direction of his parents' room, to say goodbye once and for all to those who raised him up to 8 years old. Suddenly, the box that Qin Hao had bought activated and began to vibrate rapidly, bouncing on the bed. A lot of blue fire came out of it, which enveloped the baby. Perhaps it was someone's Kai that possessed the child. Approaching the chambers of Yunzai, his mother, Qin Feng bent one knee, slowly sinking down on it. Getting wet in the rain, the young man continued to tightly squeeze the spine that belonged to Hao. Qin Feng came to make a final appeal. Bowing low and resting his hands on the cold and wet slab covering the courtyard, Qin Feng began to appeal to his parents to go outside and see their son for the last time for a long time. Although Qin Tian knew everything, he did not tell Yunzai anything, so the children's mother absolutely did not know what was going on in their house. The contempt with which the father looked in the direction of the eldest son had a fear stronger than the deafening thunder in the street. After shouting a second time, even louder, to his parents, Qin Feng made it clear to them that he had done everything as they had agreed with Qin Tian and the family elder. Now the young gentleman is going to leave through the forest into the valley. Tears appeared in the eyes of parents who lost 2 sons on this night for an indefinite time. Qin Hao needed time for a long recovery, and Qin Feng is being expelled, giving a reward for his head. Continuing to bow with the bones in his hands, Qin Feng's face did not seem at all scared or anxious. The young man knew that space was waiting for him, where he would finally find complete freedom of action and begin to harden in full force. The completely wet young man got to his feet and shouted to his parents that he was leaving now, leaving his family here. Qin Feng continued his theater of heroism, convincing everyone how brave he was for his age. With a nimble and sharp leap, Qin Feng jumped onto the roof of the building, finishing saying his farewell words. Walking away from home, he took the August bones with him, just in case something happened to him. The boy's mother ran out into the yard under a heavy downpour and fell at the place where her son had last stood. She screamed and called him with all her might, but no one reacted anymore, and Qin Feng was not heard nearby. Large tears, like drops of this downpour, began to appear in Yun Zai's eyes. The woman could not believe that she would have to face this when her children were still so young. The chosen ones have a difficult path, but I wanted to postpone all this. Continuing to kneel, the girl screamed louder and louder, shedding heavy tears on the gray slab. The bright red spots that remained after Qin Feng's bows began to be washed away by the rain, carrying away from the Qin family's courtyard. Unable to withstand all the emotions, Yun Zai began to shake in the side, and then she began to fall to the side, having managed to put out her hands. Qin Tian was already flying down the stairs to help his wife up and take her into the house to shelter from the rain. He hugged his wife, who was lying on the cold ground. Qin Tian called out to her, trying to bring her to her senses, but her mother was too ill. She hoped that all this was just a disgusting dream, after which the girl would wake up now. After leaving the grounds of the family mansion, Qin Feng looked back, mentally saying goodbye to his home and family. Still, apart from the fact that it was a solid theater of the boy, some emotions were still playing inside. The great-grandfather and elder of the Qin family appeared outside the fence at that moment and told the young man that, as a child, he had already dawned, and also that the Qin family would soon announce the order to kill him in all ancient times. The elder asked Qin Feng where and in what direction he would move, to which the guy almost immediately replied that he would go to the Yinyu court. The young man's answer sounded very firm and convincing, as it seemed to his great-grandfather. The great-grandfather wished his grandson to return home alive when everything was over, and Feng, continuing the lyrics that he had spread, continued walking without turning around, but replied that he would definitely return as soon as he sorted out his affairs. The system was simply jubilant and was ready to shower Qin Feng with ovations for what a performance he had staged for the sake of invincible double pupils and independent life. Feng said it was all just romance. The next morning, the weather was very different from what happened at night. The sun was shining brightly. It was quite fresh and warm rays warmed the mansion of the Qin family, where a terrible event happened not so long ago. One of the ladies of the court came into Qin Hao's room with a wide smile and a wonderful mood. She was holding a metal basin with warm water in her hands so that the young gentleman could wash and cheerfully start his new day. What she saw in the room threw her into a strong shock. The young master was badly injured. Traces of blood surrounded the boy's body, and Qin Hao himself lay silent and immobilized. The basin of water fell out of the girl's hands and hit the floor. A loud scream was heard in the family mansion, which the young girl simply could not contain. She was very scared and did not know at all what to do in this situation. Gathering her thoughts together, she decided it was time to act. She ran out of the room, through several corridors, and ran towards the rooms where the rest of the Qin family members were located. The girl flew with all her legs and was already on the way shouting that the second gentleman had been attacked. Soon, everyone already knew about the assassination attempt on Qin Hao that took place at night. The father stood over his son, gently holding him by the shoulders. The boy has already been assisted by a local doctor, who rewound the gentleman almost entirely. Everyone was stunned by what had happened. There was a rumor among the residents that the killer was the eldest son of the Qin family, but someone could not believe it, because everyone knew the eldest son as a polite, hardworking, and intelligent boy, the future owner of the house. The girl who was the very first to discover the injured Qin Hao still could not fully recover. She had no idea that it was Qin Feng who did it, because she saw how the gentleman grew up from an early age. The silence in the room was broken by the boy's father, Qin Tian, who, with a furious cry, barely holding back tears, turned to the other people standing behind him and shouted that it really was Qin Feng, an ungrateful son. Suddenly, after his loud shout, Qin Tian raised his hand to his face and started coughing. The cough itself was very strange, not like the one that people make when they have a cold or when they just choked on something. In the next minute, the cough only got stronger and, ceasing to restrain himself, Qin Tian released a stream of thick and red mass. Clutching his chest already, the owner of the house, swaying on his weakening legs, began to fall. The gentleman's face was very gloomy because he knew about everything, but nevertheless the injury of the youngest son and the departure of the elder from the family were a real tragedy for him. Tears gushed down his face, and in Qin Tian's mind, he only remembered Fang. Finally collapsing into the hands of his subjects, Qin Tian lost consciousness, closing his eyes. The master's clothes, as well as his face, were covered in blood, and the servants, watching with panic, began to shout the master's name. Suddenly, an elder of the Qin family appeared in the middle of the crowd. He went to his grandson with the words that envy was born in Qin Feng's heart, and he tore out his brother's august bones to use them. It was a monstrous crime. After the crime was solved, Qin Feng, unrepentant, attacked the guards and escaped, so his great-grandfather, as an elder of the Qin family, announced that his grandson was now expelled from the Qin family and would be killed without mercy. People couldn't believe that Qin Feng would be subjected to such a punishment. One of the servants turned to the elder, telling him that the august bones of Qin Hao are broken, so they also lose the nature of Qin Feng. After all, how much the eldest son was developed, along with what artifacts the younger one had, could serve as a means of victory in the era of the Great Battle. But the elder said that such behavior is not worthy of the Qin family. After the crime was discovered in the Qin family's house, rumors spread very quickly throughout the valley, as well as to the Imperial court, which was headed by the great Dazia. The emperor himself at this time gathered all his subjects and advisors to announce the news to them. Sitting on the throne and spreading his arms wide, he did not hide his joy, telling that one of the chosen of the Qin family was crippled, and the second had escaped. He believed that this combination of circumstances was just some kind of gift from heaven to him, because not so long ago he was very concerned about the problems associated with the rapid development of the children of the Qin family. Dazia laughed out loud, shouting that it was something magnificent. Announcing that the emperor was going to celebrate this event, he said that at his behest he wanted to choose concubines in order to brighten up this great day. The court servants fell to their knees and worshipped, expressing greetings to the master. Meanwhile, Qin Feng was walking on a small donkey, making his way through a dense green thicket. Opening the system display, he checked the number of villain points he had scored. Qin Feng was finally able to raise 1,000,000. The young gentleman already knew where he would spend the earned points of the villain, which he got during the cunning deception of his whole family. By selecting a section of his level on the display, he was ready to purchase a perfect match card. Qin Feng decided that right now he would spend his 1,000,000, bringing his secret of the 33 heavenly creators to a perfect match. A blue light of Kai aura formed around the boy. The transition was almost complete. The aura began to gradually dissipate, and Qin Feng, looking at his hands, did not understand whether the transition was completed or not yet. He thought that a perfect match would give a huge surge of strength, but the limit of great completeness lay elsewhere. Suddenly, not far away, Qin Feng heard several rude male voices. They were heard 50 meters away, behind the trees. They turned to the girl, persuading her to have fun with them and then they would let her go. Qin Feng realized that this could be a great opportunity for him to try his hand, because his hands were already itching with curiosity. Using superhuman speed, the gentleman jumped off his donkey towards the company. In order to remain unnoticed, Qin Feng decided that he would make his way to the place where everything was happening, through the trees from above, because otherwise he might scare off the attackers. Stopping, he finally saw those who were conducting the conversation. They were 3 men, quite large and all enclosed with a characteristic hieroglyph, the same for everyone. They surrounded the girl, who looked defenseless, and was very afraid of the guys who waved their fists in front of her. After taking a closer look, Qin Feng was shocked by the fabulous beauty possessed by this cute young girl. Her pink thick hair had a slight shine and fell below the waist, and her eyes were sky blue. One of the reasons why the gentleman left his palace was the desire to see the world and new people, to meet a wonderful girl. Exhaling, he remembered that ever since he came to this world, he had been fighting so that his father would not push him to the edge. While Qin Feng was admiring the young beauty, the guys from the gang of villains took action and began attacking the girl. One of them pushed her back, and the girl herself screamed violently, starting to cry out of fear. Immediately coming to his senses and reacting to the scream, Qin Feng realized that for now he had to save this beauty and right now it was time to make his exit. Shifting his gaze to the guys, he quickly developed a plan of action. Spreading his arms to the sides, Qin Feng prepared to jump down from the tree towards the girl's abusers. Taking a step forward, he began to descend with a cry that the girl was immediately released and left alone. Before he could finish his battle speech completely, he saw how another savior took up the bandits faster than him. A man appeared out of nowhere and kicked the guy attacking the girl on the back of the head, from which he screamed. The bald leader of the bandit squad collapsed, hitting his face on the hard and cool ground. His henchmen did not have time to react in any way to what had happened and stood staring at it all with wide open eyes. When the guy who was the first to help landed, removing one of the offenders, he reached for his blade. Directing his gaze in the direction of the remaining two, he said that even in broad daylight bandits dare to attack. Covering the young beauty with pink hair with his hand, the young man finally bared his blade and stood between the girl and the bandits. She was confused because she did not expect such quick help at all. Qin Feng, watching all this from the side, realized that he had almost completely missed the opportunity to attract attention to the girl, because his heroic deed was simply stolen by another. He had already seen the way the girl was looking at him. Then one of the men screamed angrily, asking the guy where he even came from. Calling him a boy, the ferocious villain noticed that no one had dared to go against the powerful tiger squad before. A second man ran up to the screaming gang member. He had some kind of paper parcel with a colored pattern in his hands. Turning to his captain, he unwrapped the package where the wanted notice for Qin Feng was written. It was written on the poster that the young master should be taken alive, and those who manage to do this will receive a reward of 100,000 spirit stones in their hands at once. Comparing the poster and the young man who stood opposite, they realized who they needed. The man with the poster fixed his gaze on the boy. He couldn't believe that they would be the ones to find the young master. From happiness, he smiled maliciously and told his friends that today the guys would finally get rich. The three immediately switched from Lin San, who was standing with an outstretched blade in his hands, still covering the girl with his body. Now they needed Qin Feng first of all, for whom they promised such a solid reward. Lin San didn't understand what was going on and for what reason Qin Feng, who had just appeared, caused such a reaction from the bandits. He turned to Fang and asked if they were his friends and what he was doing here. Qin Feng couldn't believe that Lin San would ask him such a stupid question. How could he even think that about the young master? With a sarcastic smile, Qin Feng looked at Zinner Lin's servant as if he was a fool. While the guys were standing and exchanging glances, the big guys from the gang of the powerful tiger took off their clothes and took something out of their pocket. They were some kind of red round pills, which the men immediately swallowed. Lin San recognized these red pills. These were pills of madness, which increased the strength of the person taking them by as much as 2 times, both physical and magical. They were quite rare in the area. Lin San continued to ponder and thought that if the guys were looking for fun before, then why take madness pills? Did the 2 young guys who came to intercede cause such a serious threat? But he still did not understand that they had taken the red pills of madness to capture the young master. The only thing that flashed through Lin San's mind was that perhaps the members of the powerful tiger gang have special predilections for fun. The manservant Zinner Lin was presented with goosebumps on his body and his muscles stiffened with disgust. Although he understood that such a thing was hardly possible at all, fantasy still took its toll. Raising his blade, Lin San remembered that in order for the madness pill to work, they must be killed immediately. As soon as the guy took a fighting stance, a ray of blue light of Kai aura swept past him. Sounds of carnage were heard from the bandits. The blue ray circled around the gang very quickly, so much so that they did not have time to offer at least some resistance. These were the blows of the blade that struck down all the opponents. When the blows stopped, Qin Feng froze, grasping his divine blade of the heavenly god and the blacksmith Chang Kun. Blood gushed from the necks of the bandits and it was clear that the bandits had come to an end. The glass gaze of the bandit who was looking in the direction of the young gentleman was very frightening, but already absolutely helpless. He tried to say something, pointing at Qin Feng with his finger. Then all 3 of them collapsed dead on the damp ground at the same time. Qin Feng continued to sit next to him, remaining motionless, and the system at that time awarded Mr. 300 villain points for beheading 3 criminals. Lin San was surprised by the power with which Qin Feng defeated his rivals. He noticed that the young master has become even stronger and uses in his arsenal more and more creepy and frightening techniques that bring death. Qin Feng hid his sword, got to his feet and looked at Lin San with a smile on his face. He greeted the chosen one of heaven, whom they had met not so long ago. Grinning, Feng called their meeting a coincidence. Then both guys turned towards the girl, who was standing with her hands joined at her chest. They came closer, and the girl introduced herself, saying that her name was Zai Yuan and she thanked the guys for the help they provided. Lin San took a step closer and looking into the girl's eyes announced that it was not worth thanking him, because he was only doing what was his duty, namely helping the defenseless who get into trouble. While the guys were engaged in conversation and paid every attention to the girl, who was incredibly beautiful, one of the survivors of the battle with Qin Feng gathered his strength and crawled towards the red firecracker lying on the ground nearby. Reaching out, he grabbed her tightly in his arms with all his strength and raised his gaze upward. At that moment, he thought about the reward that was promised for the capture of the young master, and figured that Qin Feng would not escape from them anywhere. After turning the fuse on the red cylinder, a shot burst out of the firecracker into the air. A bright red fire soon exploded and the symbol of the powerful tiger gang appeared in the sky. It was a signal to all the other members who were nearby. The guys looked up and saw the tiger's mark. They understood that reinforcements would definitely arrive now, and something had to be done about it. Said that their captain was in the third heaven of the limit of the highest valor, and if the guys wanted to stay alive, then they had better obediently surrender now. From these words, Zai Yuan was frightened, because she had never seen such a powerful warrior possessing the third heaven of the highest valor before. At the same time, Qin Feng jumped up and grabbed the girl by the hand and rushed to the side, showing an approving gesture to Lin San. The young master said that if the young man is so brave, then let luck be on his side in this battle. Rushing towards the forest, Qin Feng realized that he had now completely taken away Lin San's attention and now equalized the chances by leading the girl behind him. Lin San was standing behind and couldn't believe such impudence. When a bang thundered in the sky and the symbol of the powerful tiger gang appeared, its other members raised their heads up, starting to think where the help signal was released from. Everyone was waiting for instructions from their captain. The captain himself was a man with a thick brown beard, gray eyes and a well-marked scar on his face, which was located on the upper part of his nose. He, like the others, looked up and smiled. Apparently the group was exploring some ruins and looking for treasures in them, but the captain abruptly began to gather the whole group, because the signal could indicate the discovery of Qin Feng, and they still promised a substantial reward for the young master. The captain was happy, because finally luck smiled on him and today he would grab Qin Feng, for which he and his gang would immediately receive riches that they could not even think about before. It was a great incentive to go right now. Meanwhile, Qin Feng continued to run away into the forest away from the place where the signal was released. Taking the girl by the hand, he led her along, and Lin San still stood there and thought that if he ran away, it would turn out that he was bragging. But on the other hand, if he stays, then he will just take and give his head to bandits who will come running in anticipation of a reward. Then he turned towards Fang and shouted to them to wait for him. Zai Yuan turned around and seeing Lin San also starting to run after the couple, she did not intentionally think that apparently it was, and the guy was really bragging, trying to impress her. The system gave a signal about the accrual of new points to the young master's account and Qin Feng decided to check what was there. It turned out that the system rewarded him for cutting off the boasting of the chosen one and winning the sympathy of the girl. After running a few hills, Lin San stopped and addressed the young master. He expressed his misunderstanding of the situation, because Qin Feng has incredible strength and status, but still runs away fearing something. Qin Feng looked at the tired Lin San and, raising his index finger up, the guy said that everything was very simple. Because taking advantage of his position, oppressing others, living by the merits of his ancestors is unworthy of a real man. Then Qin Feng smiled and added that he intended to beat out a place for himself in the sun, relying on his own strength. And the system at that time praised the gentleman for the hypocrisy that Qin Feng demonstrates. The young gentleman then lowered his eyes down, closed them and broke into a ridiculous smile, beginning to be embarrassed. He was encouraged by the fact that the system was praising the boy and thought that by doing so she was putting him in an awkward position. Lin San just looked at the gentleman, thinking for a long time what to say to the guy. The servant expressed his admiration for Qin Feng's determination, and the master maliciously accepted all the compliments said to him, putting his hand on his belt. Qin Feng had already finally realized that he had completely eclipsed Lin San, so in order to leave him no chance at all, he decided to ask the servant why he was here now, and not with Lin Zin'er in the city of Tianxing. Lin San joined hands, continuing to show sincere respect and admiration for the gentleman, while all this time he was trying to get into an advantageous position in front of the girl. He said he was here to gain experience. Qin Feng asked Lin San who he wanted to gain experience here in the forest and why he was going to come back after that. Then the girl standing behind Feng smiled and said that she left for the same reason as Lin San. Qin Feng was surprised that the girl was also looking for experience here. But as a bookworm with 10 years of experience, he mentally stated that while the heroes are talking, at this time the villains are deceiving people. Then he continued to develop the idea thinking that when all these guys say that they have gone to gain experience, then in fact they always run to meet ruins, treasures, and beauties. Absolutely any beauty saved by the main character, most likely also left home because of her stubbornness. At the same time, there are a lot of scum in her life that she can't handle on her own. But just because the damn hero is loyal to a useless young lady, then with great probability he will sit on her neck until the end of his years or until the girl realizes this and throws this false hero. After carefully examining the girl once again, Qin Feng came to the conclusion that if she was expensively dressed, and in general looked like a pretty fool, then surely the girl came from a noble family. The guy didn't know whether to reveal his thoughts to him or not. Later, Qin Feng, Zai Yuan and Lin San sat together inside the cave. They lit a fire and, being pretty hungry, decided to fry a few bird carcasses to have dinner with them. A lively dialogue was going on behind the fire. Qin Feng, realizing that the girl was also his potential source for earning villain points, continued to try in every possible way to make a special impression on her. Handing her one of the carcasses, the gentleman said that the girl could eat part of it too. The girl was devilishly hungry and did not refuse the portion offered by Qin Feng at all. She looked sweetly at the young gentleman, smiled at him and thanked him, picking up a bird carcass on a branch. After that, Zai Yuan began to have dinner, and Qin Feng silently watched this, thinking that since the girl was eating his chicken now, then perhaps later the young master would be able to feed from her hands for such a kind attitude to the lady. Turning back to the side where Lin San was sitting, Qin Feng addressed him, appointing himself on duty in the first half of the night, and the servant Zinner Lin as the second. Lin San did not argue and agreed, because he was terribly sleepy. After the guys talked and a lookout was appointed, Qin Feng headed towards the cave entrance to camp there. After making his way through several vines and greenery that hung from above, he went out into the fresh air. The young gentleman stopped and decided to have dinner. Looking around the area, Qin Feng remembered that he had not even used his chance to play the lottery for Qin Hao's August bones, so while he was alone, he could do it. Opening the display of the system, the guy went to the section where it was possible to scroll the lottery wheel. Pressing the button with his finger, Qin Feng opened the wheel and continued to eat, thinking about what the young master would be able to win this time. Possible prizes were reflected on the wheel itself. Among them were the August Bones, Invulnerability, the Sacred Body of Battle, the Double Pupil, Telekinesis, the Precious Skill of a True Dragon, Conversion to Ishvara, and several others. When the wheel began to spin, Qin Feng immediately put down his food and began to closely monitor what he was about to get. Invulnerability would definitely come in handy now, but the arrow stopped, giving him Telekinesis. The boy began to inspect the cave around for those things that would help him immediately try out his new technique. Lifting his head up, he saw that several stones were highlighted by the illumination of his vision. Stretching his hand forward, at first he did not know at all whether it was worth just making a gesture or saying something to make telekinesis work. But everything worked out and the stones began to move slowly in the holes of the rock, where they rested peacefully. When the stone that was Qin Feng's target burst out of the hole, it was immediately carried with great speed clearly in the direction of the master's hand. Qin Feng caught it and was very impressed with his new strength. Completely forgetting that he had food in his other hand, Qin Feng continued to stare at the stone and think about telekinesis. One of the thoughts was a comparison that it seems that X-ray vision often appears in manga. The young master considered that the gift he now possesses is a real treasure, but it was necessary to find out what else this telekinesis is capable of, so the next objects for testing were the sleeping companions of the boy. Having started another prank, Qin Feng developed a plan for how he could again make a substitute for the chosen one of heaven, as well as earn some more villain points in his piggy bank. Smiling, Qin Feng turned towards Zai Yuan. The young gentleman stretched his hand forward, pointed it at the sleeping girl, and began to use telekinesis. The hand began to glow slightly with a blue light, and soon Qin Feng had exactly what he wanted in his hand. And Qin Feng's target turned out to be the t-shirt that was under the dress. The master was pleasantly surprised that even so he could use his power. Quickly hiding the thing, Feng turned to the entrance so that he would not be suspected. Zai Yuan woke up as it happened, but at first she didn't understand what exactly woke her up. Opening her eyes, she looked around the room. Qin Feng was outside, and Lin San was lying and sleeping next to her. Looking down, the girl realized that her t-shirt covering her body had disappeared somewhere. Zai Yuan couldn't understand how it happened like that. Blushing slightly from embarrassment, the girl quickly covered her body with her hands and began to look for the culprit. Looking around once more, she thought that only she, Lin San and Qin Feng were in the cave right now. Qin Feng is on duty from the outside, and besides, he is as smart as an 8-year-old child, which means Lin San did it. The girl carefully prepared herself, swung and gave a slap in the face, which was the strength of the nearby servant Lin San, from which the guy instantly woke up. I absolutely do not understand the reason for this behavior. Qin Feng showed up right there and, spreading his hands, asked the girl what had happened and what Lin San had taken from her. Lin San himself continued to be in shock from the blow to the face and silently pointed at the girl with his hand, waiting for an explanation. Qin Feng came closer to be in the center of the theater that he himself had arranged. Continuing to eat, he looked at the chosen one of heaven, and the girl continued to accuse the servant of what he actually did not do. While Lin San was still trying to figure out what had happened, and Qin Feng was standing next to him and trying to hold back his laughter, Zai Yuan got up and headed for the exit of the cave, not wanting to be in the company of guys anymore. Seeing that the girl with pink hair was trying to leave them, the guys continued to sit in disbelief, spreading their hands. Lin San asked Qin Feng why he received such a strong blow on the cheek and what could have happened while he was sleeping. Then Zai Yuan's scream was heard outside, as well as the loud roar of a wild beast. The boys were wary, the girl got into trouble again, and she needs to go help out. Lin San thought that this was his opportunity to improve. Jumping to his feet, he grabbed his sword with his hand and ran towards the exit in the direction from which the screams were heard. Lin San was in a hurry because he had to save Zai Yuan and even do it faster than Qin Feng. But Qin Feng himself was not in too much of a hurry, and after looking at Lin San who jumped out, he thought that he had just become disgusting in the eyes of Zai Yuan, and now he was going as a brave man to save her in order to please the girl. Slowly getting to his feet, Qin Feng continued to think, grinning at Lin San, whether the hero's halo was too big for him to arrange. But if so, then it's time for the master to demonstrate his abilities. Qin Feng finally got to his feet, preparing for a sharp jerk towards Zai Yuan. He no longer intended to pretend and was ready to fully reveal all the cards in front of the girl in order to permanently resolve the dispute between the young men. Rushing past Lin San with great speed, leaving behind the same blue light that appears when the master uses his superhuman speed, he left the servant behind. Lin San didn't understand how it was possible to move so fast. Like a comet, Qin Feng jumped out of the gorge where the guys were located earlier. He rushed towards the disaster and saw that the girl was attacked by a large and toothy white tiger. The animal has already prepared to arrange a hearty dinner. At the moment of the tiger's throw, which had already opened its mouth full of teeth, Qin Feng was one step away from the girl herself. He shouted that Zai Yuan could not be afraid and he was already rushing to her aid at wind speed. At the last moment, grabbing Zai Yuan, Qin Feng took her in his arms and raced on, passing the tiger, which rushed after them. The girl's gaze at that moment was completely riveted to the savior, who seemed to her very brave. Stopping at the spot, Qin Feng looked around the surroundings very quickly. He heard that the tiger continues to follow the guys and had to hide somewhere to finally get rid of the wild beast. Raising his head up, the young master decided that by climbing up the tree he would completely escape from pursuit, and they would have some time with Zai Yuan while Lin San also runs to her aid. The girl, being in the strong hands of the young gentleman, was ready to melt with emotion. She felt completely safe and could no longer take her eyes off her savior, who, as it turned out, was so strong. After landing on the tree, Qin Feng got comfortable and slowly began to unclench his hands, lowering the girl onto a strong branch that was under the guys. Zai Yuan carefully stood up, caught her balance, but still did not take her eyes off the master. Qin Feng hugged Zai Yuan and gathered himself. He asked the girl if everything was okay and if she was hurt, to which he received a wide smile in response. The girl said that the gentleman came on time and she was not hurt at all. Meanwhile, the tiger, which was rushing furiously after its prey snatched from its hands, crashed into a deafening thud into a tree. From the force of the blow, the tree swayed, and the beast itself fell to the ground, losing consciousness for a while. The inertia of the blow reached the guys standing on the tree branch. Zai Yuan was not ready for this and began to sway on her feet. She began to lose her balance, falling towards the ground. It was quite high and the girl was in danger again. Zai Yuan let out a small scream and squinted, starting to fall. Qin Feng controlled everything and put out his hand in time, keeping the girl on her feet, not letting her fall. Grabbing Zai Yuan, the young man shouted to her to be careful. But at the moment when Qin Feng grabbed the girl, his hand did not intentionally slide down from the belt to Zai Yuan's hips. The young master was forced to continue holding on until the danger completely passed them. Looking at Zai Yuan, Qin Feng thought that because of this situation where his hand slipped down, he could ruin everything and embarrass the girl. After all, this time, no matter how much he wanted, the situation turned out by itself and absolutely by accident. There was a slight pause between the guys, and Qin Feng looked at the girl, waiting to see if there would be any reaction from her to this. But Zai Yuan was looking down where the beast was wandering and did not seem to notice or attach any importance to the master's hand at all. Then Qin Feng realized that he would not test her inattention and quickly removed his hand from Zai Yuan's thigh. It was necessary to do something about the beast, as a noise was suddenly heard in a nearby tree. Lin San climbed up a nearby tree and shouted to the young master that they were dealing with a saber-toothed tiger located in the 9th heaven of the Superman limit. He added that only together they can defeat him. Zai Yuan was even more scared, because it was her trick that brought such serious trouble. At the same time, Qin Feng thought that if he showed off, the chosen one of heaven would go over to his side, but he would not earn villain points. Qin Feng's gaze changed very quickly. After all, he has always followed the path of the villain of fate, and why should he, in this case, choose the outcome where he will get the attention of Zai Yuan? Chuckling and turning his gaze towards Lin San, who was standing next to him, Qin Feng told him whether it was worth fighting together at all, when the young master himself would be perfectly able to defeat such a powerful opponent. Qin Feng turned to Zai Yuan and told the girl to wait for him here, and the young master will now go down to fight with the saber-toothed tiger. Zai Yuan began to worry and asked the gentleman to be careful. In the next second, Qin Feng lowered his head to the ground, where a hungry beast was already waiting for him. The young gentleman jumped down from the tree and rushed down, looking into the eyes of danger. The beast prepared for Qin Feng's attack. Lin San watched as Qin Feng rushed down to the tiger and shouted to him, calling the young master's brother, that Fang should not be stubborn, because they could defeat the tiger only by joint efforts. But Qin Feng did not even listen to him, but only said that Lin San was boring and the young gentleman was already pretty tired. Having drawn his sword, Fang thought that he could easily and alone cope with such a threat as the tiger of the 9th heaven of the Superman limit. After landing on the ground, Qin Feng looked at the saber-toothed monster without much fear, continuing to tightly grip his Chang Kun divine sword in his hands. He didn't doubt himself at all. Taking out his sword, Qin Feng struck the tiger in one swift movement, hitting it in the neck. The young master was trying to do the same trick as with the bandits of the powerful tiger when he beheaded all three. The saber-toothed beast howled in pain. The blow fell exactly in the area where Qin Feng was aiming. At that moment, the tiger's eyes began to glow redder than before. Maybe the fight wasn't over yet. When Qin Feng jumped aside after making his move, the response was not long in coming, and the saber-toothed tiger went on the attack after recovering from the cut. The young gentleman expected that he would finish everything with one reception, but it was not there. Zai Yuan was worried about the young master and tried in every way to support him, shouting from above. When the tiger rushed at Fang, the girl was scared and told the gentleman to be careful, but Lin San was already coming to help. Zinner Lin's servant lowered himself to the ground, standing next to Qin Feng. He only wanted to help the master, but he perceived it as an attempt to steal loot and furiously turned to Lin San, saying that he was already tired of him. Then Qin Feng realized that his time was limited and he needed to use his entire arsenal to hit the saber-toothed tiger as quickly as possible. Closing his eyes, the young master summoned the power of the heavenly dragon, which he won in the lottery. Stretching out his palm, a huge fire-breathing dragon burst out of it, which opened its mouth and headed towards the beast. Qin Feng continued to stand still, controlling his strength, guiding the dragon towards the target. The tiger went on the attack, hoping to defeat the heavenly dragon first, and then deal with his master. The beast's gaze became more aggressive and frenzied with every minute spent in a fierce battle. When the saber-toothed beast and the heavenly dragon collided, the fire-breathing beast detonated, caused a huge explosion, in which the fiery power of the young master's Kai continued to hover. After the smoke disappeared, the defeated beast was visible. He was thrown several meters to the side, dragging his body along the ground, leaving traces of blood. The tiger was completely defeated. Zai Yuan immediately ran to Qin Feng, and her eyes flashed undisguised admiration for the master. She noticed that Mr. Qin was fighting incredibly hard. But then Qin Feng turned his attention to his feet. A great reception, the gentleman thought. But isn't it spending too much effort from him? Feng remembered that even when he and his ex had fun for several days in a row, there was no such consequence. But thinking about it was interrupted by a rustle in the bushes. The group of people came out of the forest, which was absolutely unknown to the guys. But there was a quite familiar and distinguishable sign on their clothes. It was the captain of the powerful tigers along with his gang. When they came out, the leader was clapping his hands, appreciating Mr. Qin's excellent fighting skills. But at the time he was praising Feng, his thugs were already drawing swords. Then the tone of the leader of the powerful tiger gang changed to hostile. The captain said that they had seen the bodies of the powerful tiger brothers and knew that this was the work of the young master, for which he would have to answer. And if the boy does not answer for this, it will be hard to temper the anger of the gang brothers. Qin Feng pointed at Lin San and said that he is his brother, so before fighting him, the captain needs to go through his brother. Turning around, Qin Feng grabbed Zai Yuan's hand and dragged her away from what was happening. The young master shouted out to Lin San that he needed some rest, and the master was leaving these nobodies to him. Lin San stood excitedly in place, turning back to the standing and very aggressive bandits. He understood that this was another trick of Qin Feng, and he simply took off with Zai Yuan. The captain of the powerful tigers took out his axe and ordered the rest of his gang to follow Qin Feng, and he would deal with the boy who was standing opposite. Lin San remembered that one of those gang members had said that their captain was in the third heaven of the limit of the highest valor, which made him much stronger than Zinner Lin's servant. The captain, switching from a step to a run, rushed towards Lin San, spinning his battle axe. He shouted out that now the boy would be in a bad way and it would be better if he immediately ran away when he saw their gang. Having struck his first blow with an axe, the ringing of metal rang out in the forest, which scared away all the birds sitting on the trees. Qin Feng repelled it by starting a confrontation with the captain of the powerful tigers. Chang Kun's heavenly sword shuddered from the powerful blow that was deflected by the young master. Only one captain of the powerful tigers remained on his feet, the rest were defeated. After that, Qin Feng grabbed Zai Yuan by the arm and dragged him away from the battlefield. The girl was worried about the fate of Mr. Lin San, because if they ran away, he would be left alone with the gang. Qin Feng began to calm the girl down, continuing to drag her along. The young master explained that Zai Yuan could not worry, because Lin San, chosen by heaven, and he had a huge halo. Unexpectedly for the guys, running past the opponents lying on the ground, someone wounded Zai Yuan in the back with a blade. The girl's arm began to weaken, and she began to fall. Qin Feng felt it and turned around. By that time, Zai Yuan had completely lost her balance and fell to her feet, screaming in pain. Qin Feng did not expect such a turn at all and was shocked by what had happened. He shouted her name, becoming enraged. Not far behind him, the guy heard a rattle and the sound of a blade falling to the ground. Qin Feng immediately realized that it was the one who had stabbed Zai Yuan in the back. The young master turned around to see his victim. On one knee was a warrior of the powerful tiger, who was already injured and breathing heavily after the blows inflicted on him by Qin Feng earlier. The fighter stretched out his hand towards the guys, saying that he would fight to the end. Gaining tremendous speed, Qin Feng stretched out his hand in front of him, clenched it into a fist, and with all the power that he had left, struck at the offender Zai Yuan. His teeth flew all over the clearing. The poor fellow himself was carried away by a blow of such force several meters to the side straight into a tree. Hitting with a loud bang, the bandit rolled to the ground, completely unconscious. Qin Feng ran back to the pink-haired beauty, slightly lifting her off the ground. The young gentleman began stroking the girl's face, trying to get some kind of reaction from her. Feng was very scared. Qin Feng understood that something needed to be done, so he took Zai Yuan in his arms. Thinking about the fact that Mr. Du was showing off and having spent all his strength, he became completely useless in battle. The system investigated its master's weakness and offered Qin Feng to buy a heavenly treasure pill for 1,000 villain points. Feng was delighted and used the function, replenishing the reserve of strength by 10%. Qin Feng's face changed from joyful to indignant. He guessed that the system couldn't be that kind, so he had to spend another 9,000 villain points to recover completely. After leaving the battlefield, Qin Feng carried the girl to the illuminated lawn and laid her on the ground. Next, the gentleman put his hand on Zai Yuan's chest to check if the girl's heart was beating. But the system interpreted this gesture differently, starting to congratulate its owner, to which the guy objected, calling the system stupid and shameless. The girl had a severe wound on her back, but Qin Feng was embarrassed by the system notifications. Turning the girl's body to the side, Qin Feng finally saw the scar left by the bandit of the powerful tiger gang. The cut was small, but deep, from which the girl lost a lot of blood. Feng looked at the wound in surprise and tried to think of a means by which Zai Yuan would help. After all, the nearest villages were hours away, and the girl definitely needed a doctor. Zai Yuan was moaning slightly in pain. It was hard for her. Qin Feng decided to hide her and leave her to rest, and he went in search of the third in their group, the heaven-chosen Lin San. After examining his hands, Qin Feng understood that by sincerely helping, the system counted actions for atrocities. It crossed all boundaries. Qin Feng was walking along a path that was in a dense thicket. He wondered if Lin San had gotten out of this creepy place. The guy got into a very dangerous situation and he needed to get out of it as soon as possible. Qin Feng walks up to the trees that were cut down and lay on the ground, spreading their branches. The clearing looked terrible. He is amazed and wonders if Lin San could have done it. Then Qin Feng thinks about it and realizes that it is not surprising that he was chosen by heaven. The guy easily fought with a whole crowd of opponents. He was very talented and strong. Suddenly, the guy hears the sound of hooves. He turns around, jumps up and quickly hides in the nearest tree to follow what is happening from the height of the tree. The guy sees men on horses moving through the forest. One of the men mentions that he was told that after the chosen Lin San wounded the captain, he went to the ruins. He orders his men to move faster. The guy is trying to figure out what ruins the men are talking about. He jumps down from the tree and lands on the ground. He straightens up and looks at the men with a smile. Men notice the guy. One of them swears and asks if the guy knows who they are. They ask how he dares to block their way. One of the men points at the guy with his hand and says that this is a guy named Qin Feng. The guy stretches out his hand and says that his name is really Qin Feng. He mentions hearing men talking about ruins. He asks what kind of place it is and why they are going there. Men abruptly break from their seats and shout that they have been looking for a guy for several days. One of them gives the command to surround the guy. The men take out their swords and move towards the guy. With one swing of the sword, the guy strikes all the men. Men stand in a stupor. Most had a visible cut on their neck. A second later, they started clutching at their throats, coughing up blood and falling to the ground. Qin Feng turns around and says that he gave the men a chance for a new life, so they should cherish it. The men looked at Qin Feng in fright. The guy bent down to one of the men and picked up the bundle that was lying next to him. Qin Feng unwrapped the bundle that was a map and began to examine it carefully. The guy realized that the city is located on a mountain of dry snow. He wonders why Lin San went there. Judging by the dotted line on the map, the guy decides that that's where everyone was going. The guy rolls up the card and puts it in his inner pocket of his clothes. He says he doesn't care, so he can go and see while he has nothing much to do. Qin Feng approaches the girl who is lying on the ground, curled up in the fetal position, and asks how long she will sleep for. The girl does not react in any way. The guy came closer to the girl and decided that while he had time, he would go and see if it was possible to merge with the august bones that he had taken from his brother. Qin Feng squats down and thinks that since he and Lin San are brothers from the same mother, then the august guests should not reject him. But that's just his guess. The guy decides to try it anyway. He pulls out a dagger, stabs himself in the chest and falls to the ground. He makes the wound deeper and decides that now he needs to insert the august bones, despite all the pain. That's what the guy does. He screams in pain and then starts coughing up blood and collapsing forward, losing consciousness. The guy is lying on the ground and swearing because of chest pain. For a while he can't do anything about the pain, so he falls asleep. The pink-haired girl slowly opens her eyes, waking up from sleep, and notices that Qin Feng is lying next to her, who put his hand on her. They slept like that for several hours. The girl abruptly moves away from the guy and calls him shameless. She kicks the guy in the chest and says that he also dares to pretend to be asleep. The guy doesn't move for a while, and then turns over on his side. The guy starts moving again and lies on his back, and the girl at that moment notices the wound on his chest. She asks how the guy got hurt. The girl crawls closer. She notices that the guy is still breathing and is happy about it. Then the girl's hand begins to glow and she realizes that this is the Kai breath that does not belong to the Moon Palace. She carefully examines her hand and thinks about what needs to be done now. The girl turns around and remembers that she was wounded by a powerful tiger gang with a poisonous dart a day ago. But she notices that now she doesn't have a single scratch on her back. She says there was a lot of Kai breathing. The girl turns to the guy and decides that Qin Feng saved her and then cured her. The guy started looking tense the next second. He squeezed his eyes tightly shut and began to make sounds of pain. The girl realizes that in Qin Feng's body, the power of Kai is getting out of control. She decides that the power of Kai must be suppressed urgently. Otherwise, something unexpected may happen. The girl presses her hand to her and looks excitedly at the guy. She thinks that Qin Feng has shown her kindness, but she cannot repay him with ingratitude. The girl still decides what needs to be done. She takes off her cape and presses the guy to her body, hugging him by the shoulders. She releases her Kai power, which helps the guy keep his powers under control. At first he squints, but then his facial features smooth out. Some time passes and Qin Feng wakes up. The girl is happy that the guy has regained consciousness. Qin Feng looks at his hand and realizes that he has merged with the august bones. He feels that he has become stronger, but does not understand which ability has increased. The girl looks anxiously at the guy, and then points at him with her hand and says that something is wrong with his eyes. They changed color and stared straight at Ziyuan, who was still holding the guy in her arms. The guy looks at the girl excitedly and asks what is wrong with his eyes. The guy's eyes turned red. A wasp flew right in front of Qin Feng's face. The guy noticed that the wasp was flying very slowly. He tried to catch her. Qin Feng catches the wasp and asks how dare she show off her skills in front of him. The girl says that the guy began to move very quickly. He made one wave of his hand so fast that she didn't have time to properly see the movement of his hand. Qin Feng looks at the girl in disbelief and says that the wasp flew very slowly, so he was able to catch it. But still, he was helped by a new improvement in his eyes, which could slow down time for him. He thinks that the August bones did not make his body stronger, but now he has enhanced invincible double pupils. The guy's host level has been raised, as a result of which the invincible double pupils have been strengthened. He immediately realizes what really happened. Qin Feng asks Lady Zai Yuan to strike him. The girl does not understand the guy's request. The guy points to his face and with a smile asks the girl to strike him as soon as possible. Ms. Zai Yuan apologizes to the young man, and then tries to punch him in the face with her hand. But for a guy, a girl's speed is too slow. He holds the girl by the hand, as he assumed that the August bones strengthened his eyes and now he can move faster. The guy looks at his hand, which is holding Zai Yuan's hand. The girl looks away, blushes and asks if she did something wrong. Qin Feng laughs and says that the girl did everything right. He convinces the girl that she has a very soft blow, which is not even felt. Zai Yuan asks where they will go now. The guy looks into the girl's eyes and says that he will take her with him to the secret limit in search of treasure. He asks if the girl agrees. The mistress agrees. Qin Feng is guided by the map. It seems to him that he and the girl have come to the right place. A huge portal appears right in front of Qin Feng and Zai Yuan. The guy receives an alert that the system congratulates him on the fact that he has a new task, to steal the fateful treasure of the chosen one by heaven. For completing this task, the guy will get a lot of experience and one golden treasure chest. Qin Feng folds his hand and wonders if Lin San and Lin Zinner have returned to Tiangxin City. He thinks that the guy actually went to look for treasure. Zai Yuan approaches the portal and tries to touch it with his finger. She asks Qin Feng if Mr. Lai Lin San really went through the portal. Qin Feng approaches the portal and says that the people of the powerful tiger said it themselves, especially since it did not seem to him that they were lying. He is about to go through the portal and tells the girl to catch up with him. Zai Yuan immediately obeys the young man. Qin Feng is the first to pass through the portal and look around. He sees a pond surrounded by huge rocks. The guy is happy because he sees that they got to the mountain border. Qin Feng takes off his clothes, and the girl at this time asks where they are. She asks if they will look for Mr. Lin. Qin Feng throws back his clothes and says that the time has not come yet. Qin Feng recalls that there was an entry in the ancient books of the Qin family that there was a spiritual pond mountain border on the ruins of the dry snow mountain. In this spiritual pond, the center of the dragon veins is full of energy that can help the cultivators break through the limits faster. If a man and a woman improve together, then time may slow down. One day in the spiritual pond is equal to 1 year. Qin Feng looks at his hand and thinks that by using the heavenly dragon, he has slightly destroyed the foundations, and the August bones are still at the stage of fusion. If the powerful tiger people were telling the truth, then Lai Lin San is in ruins with them. The guy thinks that, having met, they will certainly engage in battle, and he will spend all his strength on his defense. So it's not even worth talking about theft. The guy decides that it was worth healing and resting first, and then joining the fight. Qin Feng then begins to smile, as he thinks that, on the other hand, he shouldn't blame his 8 years of life in the Qin family for this. He could never find his parents. They were always so happy. Qin Feng remembers reading books in the library. He loved to study since childhood and read a lot. Otherwise, this place would be useless. The guy wonders if others know about this place. He decides that he needs to take advantage of the opportunity. Zai Yuan asks when they will go to look for Lai Lin San. The girl notices that the guy is standing without clothes and falls silent from shock. Zai Yuan blushes and screams in embarrassment. Qin Feng looks at the girl gloomily. Then he makes a quick jerk, picks up the girl and jumps with her into the pond while she screams with indignation. Qin Feng and Zai Yuan dive under the water. The girl kicks the guy and swims out. She starts spitting water out of her mouth and regaining her breath. Her face was very red. The girl is still blushing. She asks what Qin Feng is doing. The guy asks who is calling so loudly. Qin Feng wonders what will happen if people from the powerful tiger come. Zai Yuan asks if the guy really pushed her into the water to protect her. Qin Feng asks if he did wrong. He thought he was doing the right thing, but he did not expect such a violent reaction of the girl. Zai Yuan asks where the guy is injured. She says she can bring medicine. Qin Feng asks the girl to forget about this incident. He blows bubbles in the water and looks at the girl, and then decides to add that the girl will be uncomfortable. After a few seconds, the guy blushes. He adds that Zai Yuan will be very ashamed, so he asks her to just take off her clothes and swim with him in the spiritual pond. Zai Yuan is embarrassed when he hears the guy's request. She doesn't want to take off her clothes and swim with him. She looks at the pond and still doesn't understand what she should do. Qin Feng raises his finger and says that if the girl does not take off her clothes, then her body will not be able to absorb the spiritual power that should help in cultivation. The girl sighs, realizing that she will have to make a decision. Zai Yuan thinks about the fact that Qin Feng is young. How can he know so much in this case? Zai Yuan smiles and says that she understands everything. She explains that they will bathe for the sake of perfection. She wants to become stronger, so she decides to swim in the pond with Qin Feng. Qin Feng receives an alert that the system congratulates the young man that he was able to deceive a girl from a good family. The guy gets 300 villain points for this. Qin Feng turns around and says that he did not deceive the girl at all. The girl went into the pond and began to straighten her hair. At this time, Qin Feng was looking at her, who blushed and still admitted that he had deceived her. But deception was not his original goal. The guy approaches the girl and says that he wants to start. She places her palms opposite each other. The girl closes her eyes and is embarrassed. Energy gathers in their palms. 3 days later, Qin Feng sat in the pond and meditated, trying to bring his powers under control. His strength was still difficult to control, so the guy was forced to train for several days. Suddenly, the guy opened his eyes and released a huge amount of energy. The guy was tense. At this time, the system congratulated Qin Feng for breaking the third heaven of the Superman limit. The guy got 1,000 villain points. The system congratulated him again on his new achievement. Then another message came, saying that Qin Feng had helped the Chosen of Heaven break through the limit of Superman and won her sympathy. He gets 5,000 points. The next notification says that Qin Feng has broken the fate-bound Chosen Ones of Heaven. He gets 5,000 villain points for it. One of the guys was asking what was going on. Another asked if the ruins were really shaking. Suddenly, something fell in front of people. Right in front of them were Qin Feng and Zai Yuan, who were sitting and meditating. They opened their eyes to see what was going on. Qin Feng and Zai Yuan were silent for a while people looked at them in shock. They were all standing in a semicircle, carefully examining the guy and the girl who had so unexpectedly appeared on their way. Zai Yuan begins to blush and try to explain himself. She says it's not what people thought. She waves her hands and asks everyone to listen to her. One of the guys recognizes Qin Feng. The second guy can't believe his eyes. And the third guy says that in this case they need to capture both Qin Feng and Zai Yuan. Zai Yuan asks why people are looking at them. Qin Feng suggests that excessive attention is caused by his irresistibility. Zai Yuan turns around and looks at the guy in disbelief. She hadn't expected to hear such nonsense from him. One of the guys turns to Qin Feng and says that he is surrounded, so he has nowhere to run. He demands that the young man surrender, as the swords may accidentally injure him. They try to grab the guy without starting a fight. Qin Feng has a weapon in his hands, and he asks if the guy is sure that they have surrounded him. The guy looked cocky and dangerous. Qin Feng scoffs at the fact that they broke through to pass on the experience. He doesn't think they're good people. One of the guys gives a command to his men to attack Qin Feng. Qin Feng is preparing for battle. He takes out his sword and puts his hands in the seal. Qin Feng thinks that he has always used only one sword in a fight before, but since so many people are attacking him, he will experience the power of 9 swords. Zai Yuan stands behind the guy and doesn't say anything. Qin Feng summons all his swords and shouts at the girl to hide behind him and get in the way during the battle. Qin Feng points his hand forward and says he wants all 9 swords to come out. Swords deliver cutting blows to opponents. Most do not have time to dodge. The guy who gave the command to attack is shocked. He doesn't understand what's going on. He asks his comrade what is going on and why Qin Feng has become so strong. One of the guys shouts at everyone to run, but he does not have time to escape and his head is taken off his shoulders. His body falls to the floor while all the other fighters stare at him dumbfounded. Qin Feng receives a message from the system congratulating him on beheading one person and getting 100 villain points. Then the system congratulates the young man again, with the fact that he beheaded several more people and received a total of 23,000 villain points. Qin Feng lowers his sword and tells Zai Yuan that they need to go. The girl looks at the bodies of the opponents in fright and thinks that the guy is very strong. He was able to defeat a whole group of opponents. Qin Feng smiles madly and thinks that he was able to create a huge wave to show how strong he is. Qin Feng and Zai Yuan got dressed and set off. The guy was looking at the map as he walked along the road, and the girl asked where they would go now. She wondered how long they had to go. Qin Feng points to the blood tree, which is depicted on the map, and says that they will go there, since the squad of the powerful tiger and Lin San were heading there. A girl is tied to a huge tree trunk. She is very worried because of the situation she is in. The girl tries to say something, but she is not given a word. There is a huge crowd of fighters in front of the girl. One of the fighters asks the captain if they can already do something with the girl. The captain asks all his warriors to calm down. He says that the girl has just given birth, so her body has weakened. One of the warriors says that their captain is very wise. The whole incident was watched by Zai Yuan and Qin Feng, who were hiding in the bushes not far away. They had not been watching this scene from the very beginning. Zai Yuan pulls on the fabric of Qin Feng's clothes and tells him that the warriors want to get rid of the woman in labor. She believes that the warriors have terrible intentions and they need to be stopped. Qin Feng pinches the girl's leg and she starts telling him that it hurts her, trying to remove the guy's hand. Qin Feng says that the girl pinched his arm and he pinched her leg so that they were even. Zai Yuan speaks negatively about the young man. Suddenly, a loud scream is heard. Qin Feng and Zai Yuan turn their gaze to the person who publishes it. They see how the girl was stabbed with a spear. She started coughing up blood and spitting it on the ground. The warriors struck more new blows while the girl screamed. Suddenly, Zai Yuan ran out of hiding and demanded that the warriors stop tormenting the girl's body. She asks if this is really how people from the powerful Tiger Squad treat their mother. The captain pays attention to the girl. The man recognizes Qin Feng. He sighs and says it's all a happy coincidence. He did not think that he would meet the young man in the forest. The captain becomes more serious and says that last time they were helped by Heaven's chosen Lin San, so Qin Feng managed to escape. The captain gathers all his strength in his left hand and takes off from the spot to strike Qin Feng. He says the guy won't run away this time. When the captain is next to the guy, Qin Feng is surprised by the man's imagination. He says the captain could have been a screenwriter. Qin Feng and Zai Yuan dodge, and the captain flies past them. Qin Feng turns around and asks if the man is okay. The guy grins at the man and does not hide it. The captain is going to attack the young man again, so he takes off at speed and runs straight to Qin Feng. He speaks negatively about the guy. Qin Feng tells Zai Yuan to go rescue the girl. He says he will fight the captain. Zai Yuan obeys and runs to the girl. The captain puts his hands in the seal and calls the tiger, which was enveloped in fire. The man is going to attack. Qin Feng says that the captain turned out to be a very powerful tiger. He says he's getting interested. Qin Feng starts screaming and summons a dragon that appears behind him. The guy raises his sword. Qin Feng smiles and asks the man to look at the fact that he has a dragon many times larger. The captain begins to get angry at the young man. He looks at Qin Feng angrily and gets very tense. The man strikes with his hand and shouts that the tiger has descended from the mountains. The guy is about to attack and shouts to summon the mighty dragon of the sky. The dragon heads towards the man and knocks him down. The captain starts screaming and falling when he can't land. The dragon demolishes absolutely everything in its path. Warriors and tree trunks rise in the air. Qin Feng receives an alert from the system, which congratulates the young man on the fact that he has dealt with almost a whole 100 people. He gets 8,800 villain points. Qin Feng looks at the devastation and the bodies that lie in front of him, saying that he did not think to arrange a large-scale battle at all, but the warriors asked for it themselves. Qin Feng puts away his weapon and says that there are so few people in the powerful Tiger Squad. He says that everything will be fine now because he got rid of the whole squad. Qin Feng looks at the powerful Tiger Squad and says he feels sorry when he looks at them. At this time, Zai Yuan brings a girl who was tied to a tree trunk. A girl tied to a tree trunk bends down and thanks Qin Feng for saving her. The guy looks at her in amazement. The girl, who was tied to the trunk of a tree, began to talk about how she actually climbed into the ruins to find a bloody body for her child. It helps to nurture the spirit. But after giving birth, the girl weakened. She didn't have the strength to fight back against people, so they were able to grab her. The girl raises her hands and says that she does not need a lot of bloody body. 10 fruits will be enough for her. Qin Feng thinks about it and says that for the sake of great maternal love, he can, within the spirit of humanism, give a girl 10 fruits. Zai Yuan admires the young man. Then the guy raises his index finger and asks, as a mother, a girl should not want her child to become lazy. He says everyone thanks each other. He asks the girl to give him 100,000 excellent spirit stones for 1 fruit. The girl looks excitedly at the young man and says that she has no spirit stones. The guy says that if there is no money, then there is no problem. He says they can agree on resources. The guy starts writing something. The girl looks at him in disbelief. Then the guy realizes that the girl doesn't even have the resources. He falls into a stupor, and then a few seconds later he says that he has seen so many poor people, but not so poor. The guy still gives the bloody body. He says the girl can take everything for free. She asks again, just in case, if she can really take the bloody body. The man looks at the girl incredulously and says that he does not want to give it away for free. He asks if the girl has money. She hesitated again. Qin Feng says that since a girl doesn't have money, she shouldn't ask stupid questions. The girl says she understood everything. Qin Feng stood with his arms crossed on his chest and looked at the girls who were feeding the little rabbits. The girl looks at the rabbits who ate berries and says that these are her children. Zai Yun strokes the rabbit and, smiling, says that rabbits are very cute. The girl takes the rabbit and puts it in Zai Yun's hands. She says that if a girl likes rabbits, then she can take one of them for upbringing. Zai Yun looks at the rabbit in her arms in shock. Then the girl jumps up and disappears while Zai Yun stares at her in a stupor. She turns her gaze to the rabbit and asks what they should do now. Qin Feng also looks at the rabbit that was sitting in the girl's arms in disbelief. Qin Feng receives a message from the system that says that the guy has completed the check and received a legendary level demon cup. The system reports that the binding has been successfully completed. Qin Feng is surprised by the system's new message. He understands that he has a difference of 2 levels with his brother. A new message from the system says that since the owner's cub is legendary, the guy must feed it correctly. The system suggests that the rabbit needs to be fed with heavenly gems. The system also reminds that 1 bloody bodhi equals 1 heavenly gem. Qin Feng looks at the rabbit in disbelief and thinks that he eats a lot. It does not seem surprising to him that his mother immediately after giving birth went in search of food. He asks which family will be able to feed such a child. Zai Yun squeezes the cloth of the youth's clothes and asks why he doesn't say anything. Qin Feng replies that if the girl wants, then they will raise him together. Qin Feng thinks that even if a girl doesn't like a rabbit, they will raise him anyway, since this kid is of legendary level. Zai Yun looks at the guy and thinks to himself that he still has a kind heart. The rabbit at this time looks at the guy in disbelief. Zai Yun smiles and starts stroking the rabbit. She says that in this case the rabbit should be given a name. Qin Feng says that the rabbit eats so much that it can only be called a glutton. Zai Yun says they will call the rabbit a tooth. Many options have been suggested. Zai Yun starts to get angry. She says it's an ugly name. Qin Feng still suggests calling the rabbit a glutton. While the rabbit is watching its owners, Zai Yun suggests calling the rabbit a baby. But Qin Feng refuses and still insists on the name glutton. Zai Yun asks if it is possible to call a rabbit a snowball. Qin Feng agrees, but sets a condition under which he will have a full name made up of the names of Zai Yun and Qin Feng, and for short, Snowball. Zai Yun gets angry and says that the guy didn't give in to her anyway. Suddenly, thunder is heard not far from Zai Yun and Qin Feng, and they see lightning strike a place in the forest. Qin Feng asks what is going on. It couldn't have been an ordinary lightning bolt. Qin Feng hears voices. The guy looks up and sees people. One of them says that Lin San has been found. He found a jade box. The second person laughs and says that the family from Tiangxin City does not want to share with anyone. He says that Lin San's family is very bloodthirsty. Another guy who was closer to Qin Feng says that they definitely need to find Lin San and teach him a lesson. Qin Feng looks gloomily at the guys and thinks about what the people of the Ximen clan are doing in the forest. Zai Yun says she has heard the name Lin San. Qin Feng takes the girl by the hand and says that they need to go. The girl is embarrassed, but agrees. Qin Feng and Zai Yun are hiding in the bushes. They see people from the Ximen clan entering some kind of cave. He hears one of them addressing Lin San and telling him to open the jade box. Lin San shows the box and says that people can approach it. Qin Feng wonders when Heaven's Chosen One became so eloquent. Previously, the guy behaved completely differently. Qin Feng thinks about it and, based on his 10 years of experience as a book lover, suggests that if the chosen one of heaven was forced to take risks, and he is calm, then if something bad does not happen, then there will be someone who will do it. Qin Feng takes Zai Yun's hand again and leads her along. The girl asks where they are going. She says that Lin San has stumbled into trouble. Qin Feng says the girl doesn't have to worry about him. The girl decides not to resist. One of the guys looks at Lin San and asks if he is really a descendant of the miraculous sword of the Heavenly Shire. He says that after 100 years he got his first sword. He also excelled in many martial arts. The guy says that there is no way to break such a small field at all. He asks if it is worthy of a descendant of the miraculous sword. He decides that he can easily destroy the field. The guy pulls his sword out of its scabbard and hits the box with it. He says that now Lin San will see the forces of the Ximen clan. He was confident that he could destroy the field that protects the box from other people's hands. The sword hits the box, but it doesn't break. The guy strikes even harder and again no result. Only the barrier itself begins to increase and repel those who hit the box. His friend in purple clothes approaches the box and says that he will help him. He hits the box. Several more people come up behind him, all of them trying to break the box. Each strikes with his sword at the box. Only the clash of swords is heard. Everyone stood in a semicircle in front of the box and struck it. Everyone put a lot of effort into breaking the box and looking at the contents. It seems to one of the guys that the field that forms around the box absorbs their improvement. One of the guys says they need to step back, but they can't. Suddenly there is a strong explosion and everyone who tried to break the box was thrown a huge distance away. The men were lying on the ground and for some time could not get up after a strong repulsive blow. Zai Yuan closes her eyes and says she's scared. Qin Feng covers his face with his hands so as not to look at what is happening. Qin Feng looks at the guys who were thrown against the wall. He looks at Lin and thinks that this guy definitely has bad intentions. It seems to him that the guy is up to something, since he allowed others to open the box. He sees Lin San smiling and raising his fingers up. A blue energy ball forms on them. All the guys who tried to break the box are lying on the ground and trying to get up, but they are in too much pain. Suddenly there is a noise and I feel an earthquake. One of the guys starts swearing, and the one in purple clothes gets up and shouts that the ruins are about to collapse. One of the guys commands everyone to run back. Everyone is leaving the ruins while they are collapsing. At this time, Lin San is standing near the casket. He points his hand at the box and makes it glow. The barrier around the box collapses. Qin Feng thinks that this is his chance. He concentrates his forces in his hand and directs it to the side and attracts the thing to himself. The guy receives a message from the system that congratulates him on the fact that the guy hastily completed the villain's assignment. He received 1 golden chest. The next message from the system said that the guy spoiled the fate of the chosen one by heaven, for which he got a chance to play the lottery once. Another message congratulated the guy for stealing a treasure from the chosen one of heaven, for which he receives 1 million villain points. The guys notice that a huge beam is coming out of the ruins. They turn around and see Lin, who grabbed the box. He was still able to destroy the barrier that protected the box. One of the guys starts getting angry. He speaks negatively about Lin and shouts, asking how he dared to hide from them. The guy takes off and shouts that Lin San stole the box from him. Lin San smiles and takes out an amulet to move. The amulet burns down and a magical seal appears around the guy. Lin San waves his hand to the guy who wanted to attack him and disappears the next second. The guy does not have time to hit Lin San and misses. The guy turns around and says that with the amulet of movement, Lin San will not be able to run far. Everyone else obeys him. They immediately take off and try to grab the guy. Qin Feng and Zai Yuan were hiding near the ruins at this time. They looked at the guys who were going to find Lin in disbelief. But so far they have not acted, but developed a strategy. Qin Feng is trying to get something out of his clothes. Suddenly he sees a guy who was passing by him. He runs to hug Zai Yuan, telling her that he is scared. The girl is puzzled by this behavior of the guy. The guy looks at Qin Feng angrily and calls him a coward. While Qin Feng is hiding behind the girl, Zai Yuan asks him why he is so afraid. She doesn't understand what happened to the guy. Suddenly, a noise is heard. Zai Yuan and Qin Feng turn around to see what's going on. Qin Feng tells the girl that they need to go too. Zai Yuan looks at the young man in shock. Suddenly, the guy picks up the girl in his arms and takes off. He jumps the gorge very quickly. He frowns and thinks that he should still have the strength left. Qin Feng demands that the system open the golden chest. The guy receives a message from the system that he has opened his golden chest. He got the essence of the sword. Now he has become much stronger. The guy's eyes are burning. Zai Yuan notices this and looks dumbfounded at the face of Qin Feng, who has fixed his gaze forward, thinking about something. He was clearly seeing something in front of him, but the girl couldn't figure out what it was. Zai Yuan says she felt the strongest essence of the sword. She's afraid they're in danger. The girl is very worried. Qin Feng smiles and asks if the girl really felt something. The girl snuggles closer to the guy and screams for him to be careful. She's worried about him. The guy's eyes are glowing again. He wonders if the enemy has decided to attack. Stones are flying at Qin Feng and Zai Yuan. Lin San holds a jade box in his hands and rejoices. He opens the box and notices that there is nothing inside. The guy looks dumbfounded inside the box. There should have been plates of heaven inside. Lin San begins to lift and shake the box. He wonders why the inside is empty. He was sure that there was some kind of mechanism inside. Zai Yuan presses his finger to his lips and asks if Qin Feng has understood the essence of the sword. The guy was sitting on the ground at that time and reading information from the system panel. Qin Feng replies that he understood the essence of the sword. He is confident that everyone who has hands can understand the essence of the sword. Zai Yuan looks at the guy with a puzzled expression. She doesn't agree with the guy's opinion. She says that Lin San was named the first sword in 100 years because he understood the essence of the sword at the age of 12. The guy got into the annals of ancient times. Qin Feng looks at the girl and asks her if he can get into the annals of ancient times. The guy looks at the system panels again and says that the deep antiquity turned out to be completely different from what he imagined. Zai Yuan frowns and says that Lin San was chosen for a reason. It was really special. Qin Feng looks at the panel on which it is offered to buy the Great Completeness Specific Correspondence card for 1,000,000 villain points. The guy agrees and presses his finger on the panel. Zai Yuan wonders what the guy is doing. She sees only how he moves his finger through the air. She doesn't understand what's going on with the guy. Qin Feng receives a message from the system, which congratulated him on the fact that he bought the Great Completeness Specific Correspondence card for 1,000,000 villain points. The next message of the system says that the guy used the map of Specific Correspondence Great Completeness. His skill to draw the sword for the execution of heaven has reached the limit of perfection. Qin Feng sighs with relief and rejoices that he has finally perfected the skill. Qin Feng notices that he has another chance in the lottery. He decides to use it. The guy turns the wheel of luck. The pointer stops at the invincible will of the sword. The guy thinks this place is terrible. He thinks that an opponent may appear at any moment. He needs to collect more skills as soon as possible. The invincible will of the sword is the ultimate state that swordsmen strive for. If there is no woman in the heart, then when the blade is drawn, the spirit of nature appears. The damage from swords increases tenfold. Zai Yuanyu rubs her eyes. She tries to see what Qin Feng sees. She wonders what's going on. She thinks that Qin Feng seemed handsome, but after a second, he was normal again. Qin Feng stared at the panel dumbfounded. Zai Yuan points his hand at the guy and asks if he is really practicing his technique. The guy is moving his hands through the air at this time. Qin Feng smiles and says that he trains something that can help a man become more resilient, stronger and stronger. The guy clicks on the cross, which is located at the top of the panel, and closes the system. Qin Feng leans back and crosses his legs. Qin Feng thinks that fate really connected him with the sword. He thinks that with 2 sword skills, a huge damage is obtained. The guy decides that he needs to find someone to test the sword with something. Zai Yuan is still sitting on the rock. She looks at the guy dumbfounded and wonders what is going on. The girl descends from the stone and examines the thing that was lying next to the guy. She asks if these are really bamboo plates of saints. The guy asks again. He wonders what it means. The girl carefully looks at the bamboo plates of the saints and says that, according to her observations, it is they. She begins to explain that the bamboo plates of the saints are plates that were handed down by the saints in ancient times. She tells us that there are only 3 scrolls: heaven, earth, man. Zai Yuan adds that the people predestined by fate from the plates of saints realize the greatest path, and not the predestined ones. They cannot read a single hieroglyph. Qin Feng had also heard similar stories from his grandfather. Every appearance of the saints' plates in the world leads to a battle, and everyone who can understand the essence of things from the records is a famous strongman in history. Qin Feng sits down on the ground and stretches out his hands to the plates of the saints. He asks the girl to give him a look. Qin Feng looks closely at the saints' records and says that this is not scientific at all. Qin Feng is very intelligent. He is surrounded by a blessed halo of understanding, but he cannot read. Zai Yuan looks at the guy with a puzzled expression and asks if he is alright. She says that if high awareness is needed for the records of saints, then fate is also needed. The girl tells that many Buddhists wrote about the fact that the fate is the same as that of the Buddha. Qin Feng throws away the saints' records and says that it's a useless thing, because he can't use them. A rabbit appears on the girl's shoulder, which looks very joyful. He jumps off and lands right on the saints' plates. Qin Feng looks at the rabbit and says that he uses the saints' plates as a summer mat. He is convinced that the rabbit has an imagination. Zai Yuan asks where he got the saints' records. The guy swears, because the girl, apparently, realized that he stole them. Suddenly, a noise is heard. Zai Yuan and Qin Feng turn around and realize that the noise is coming from the bushes. Qin Feng turns around and thinks it's Lin San. The guy immediately takes off and runs to the place where the noise was heard. Qin Feng runs to the bushes and says that he has missed Lin San very much all this time. Zai Yuan runs after the guy and asks him to wait. Qin Feng enters the clearing and sees the fight between the guy and Lin San. They are both standing with their weapons at the ready. Lin San asks how many times he needs to be repeated to finally be believed. Lin San was very angry. He stared intently into the eyes of his opponent and tried to convince him that the box was empty. Qin Feng approaches Lin San and stands next to him. He asks why the guy is talking to them for so long. He says he can just show them where their place is. Lin San looks at the guy who appeared in disbelief. Qin Feng shows the guys his sword and asks them to look at it. Qin Feng smiles and raises his sword, and Lin San looks at him with bewilderment. The guys fell silent and looked at Qin Feng questioningly. Suddenly, a loud sound of sword strikes is heard. Qin Feng tried to strike in a jump, but his opponent managed to block the blow. The guy says that Qin Feng has some weak limit of superhuman strength, so he also dares to challenge others to fight. The guy says that he has the limit of the highest valor. The guy calls him a madman. Qin Feng looks sadly at the guy and asks if opponents like him can speak at least a little more original. In front of Qin Feng, Lin San and Zai Yuan are guys with swords at the ready. Everyone is getting ready for battle. Qin Feng, smiling, looks at his opponents and rejoices at their huge number, thanks to which he will be able to test the sword. Qin Feng is enveloped by an aura. Opponents immediately notice that the guy uses the essence of the sword. One opponent says it's unimaginable. He can't believe that an 8-year-old child could comprehend the essence of the sword. Another opponent says that Qin Feng mastered the essence of the sword 4 years earlier than the heaven-chosen Lin San. Lin San looks at Qin Feng and thinks that they haven't seen each other for a few days, and he has become stronger again. Zai Yuan presses his hand to his chest and thinks that Qin Feng likes to show his best side. One of the opponents looks at the guy angrily and thinks about how a man like Qin Feng could know the limit of Superman. Then the guy guesses and begins to worry. The opponent reflects on the connection between the essence of the sword and the invincible will of the sword. He cannot understand how the child was able to master all these techniques. One of the opponents puts his hand on the guy's shoulder and asks if he was really afraid of the chosen one of heaven, who understood the essence of the sword. He asks what will happen to the Ximen clan in this case. The guy looks at his friend in disbelief. Then this guy, from the Ximen clan, comes forward and, addressing Qin Feng, asks if the guy is the same traitor who snatched the august bones from his brother. The guy who was scared asks not to talk about it. Qin Feng replies that it really is him. The guy asks if the Ximen people want to fight with him. The guy smiles maliciously and says that's exactly what he's thinking. The guy finally waited for the battle. Qin Feng raises his hand and says that since he is still a child, the guy in purple clothes can make the first 10 moves. A guy from the Ximen clan pulls out his sword and asks why the guy says such phrases. He wonders if the guy wants to join the fight. A guy in purple clothes is lifted off the ground by someone and carried away. He shouts, asking what's going on. His friend shouts at everyone to run. One of the fighters looks at the guys who are running away. He asks how they can be called men after such a thing. He is disappointed in his elder master. The second fighter pulls out his sword and, addressing the son of the Qin family, challenges him to a fight. Qin Feng smiles and agrees. He raises his hand and, pointing at himself, tells them to attack. He promises not to move. One of the fighters points his hand at Qin Feng and says that he has already spoken negatively about the Ximen family many times. He calls the guy arrogant. He swears to get rid of it. All the people from the Ximen clan decide to launch an attack. They all run towards the guy, swinging the sword. Qin Feng uses the essence of the sword again. An aura envelops him. The guy lifts all his opponents into the air and strikes them. The guy receives a notification from the system that he has defeated one of the people and received 100 points for it. The second message of the system says that the guy defeated 2 people and got 200 points. In the third message, the system congratulated the guy that he had defeated 8 people and received 800 points for it. One of the fighters arrived at the estate. He knelt down and bowed his head, telling about the battle with Qin Feng. 2 men were sitting in front of him. The one in the blue clothes was the head of the house. He got up from his chair and asked how one 8-year-old child could defeat the leader of a powerful tiger gang in a second. The man in blue clothes raised his hand to his chin and thought. He thought about the fact that the leader was in the 3rd heaven of the limit of the highest valor. Even with such a huge talent, he could not avoid defeat. The man thinks that the only explanation for his defeat may be that Qin Feng used the powers of the august bones that he took from his brother. He was too strong. The man in blue clothes sits back down on the chair and, turning to the elder, says that Qin Feng's insanity with a power not belonging to him affected his personality. The elder does not think so. The elder raises a cup with a drink and says that he has been teaching Qin Feng for many years. He says that the guy shows arrogance, so the august bones have nothing to do with it. The man in blue clothes sighs and hopes for all that has been said. A man in blue clothes turns to the fighter and asks if there is any more news. He is interested in everything that concerns Qin Feng. The fighter folds his hands and says that the eldest son not only defeated the whole gang of the powerful tiger, but also the people of the Ximen family who posed a danger to him. The man with the blue clothes gets up from his seat again and asks how this could happen. The elder demands that the man sit down and calm down. The head of the house obeys and returns to his place. The elder looks at the fighter and asks if there will be any more news. The fighter says that the eldest son still understood the strongest essence of the sword and the invincible will of the sword. The elder laughs, strokes his beard and rejoices that Qin Feng shows great promise. It is developing very quickly. Another man comes to the estate. He turns to His Majesty and says that something terrible has happened that they need to know about. The man sitting at the table and reading the documents asks what happened and why the panic. The man bows his head and talks about Qin Feng. He says that the guy not only with one swing of the sword defeated the highest valor limit cultivating in the third heaven, but also mastered the essence and will of the sword. The man puts down his documents and asks what the man is afraid of if the very chosen one left the family for her protection. He orders to get rid of him. The man bends down and says that the Majesty is very wise. Lin San looked at Qin Feng and Zai Yuan, who were splashing in the pond. He wondered how an 8-year-old child could surpass him on the path of the sword. He wonders if the guy could have independently come up with the technique of drawing the sword for the execution of heaven along with the essence and will of the sword. While the guy was holding out his hand to Zai Yuan, he received a system alert that congratulated the guy on having dealt a serious blow to the confidence of the chosen one by heaven. He began to doubt himself. For this, the guy got 100,000 points. Then the guy spreads his arms, smiles and approaches Lin San's brother. He says the guy is very good with a blade. He asks if his brother can show him some tricks. Lin San starts to get angry. He points his hand at the guy and demands that he stop. The guy says that Qin Feng has even mastered the invincible will of the sword, so he can't ask him to have Lin San teach him basic techniques. He thinks the guy is just mocking him. Qin Feng approaches Zai Yuan and hugs her. The girl is embarrassed and raises her hands. Qin Feng says that Lin San doesn't want to teach him. He tries to convince the girl that he does not know the basic techniques. He only knows how to draw a sword. Lin San gets even angrier. He raises his hand and says, drawing a sword for the execution of heaven is not the best idea. Qin Feng receives a new message that he has dealt a serious blow to the confidence of the chosen one of heaven. He began to doubt himself again, for which Qin Feng gets another 100,000 points. Zai Yuan hugs Qin Feng and looks at Lin San. She frowns and asks why the guy speaks negatively about Qin Feng. Qin Feng stands and smiles. Because of Zai Yuan's comment, Lin San began to feel even worse. Qin Feng receives another message that he has dealt a serious blow to the confidence of the chosen one of heaven. He began to doubt himself again, for which Qin Feng gets another 100,000 points. The guy grins. Lin San turns around and leaves dissatisfied. Qin Feng shouts to his brother and asks where he went. The guy asked him not to get upset. He says that Lin San is the first sword in 100 years. He assures the guy that he will be able to understand the invincible will of the sword. Qin Feng asks the guy to look at him as an example. The guy convinces Lin San that he didn't do anything, but still figured out how to master new skills. Lin San takes off and runs away. Qin Feng receives another message that he has dealt a serious blow to the confidence of the chosen one of heaven. He began to doubt himself again, for which Qin Feng gets another 100,000 points. Qin Feng waves and asks Lin San not to leave. He shouts that he wanted to talk to him, but the guy still doesn't listen to him and runs away. Qin Feng was joking. He grins, as he has earned 400 points with just a couple of phrases. He can't let the guy run away. Qin Feng runs after Lin San and asks him to wait. Lin San accelerates and screams that he didn't approach him. Suddenly, a huge cloud with people appears over the heads of guys and girls. Everyone raises their head and looks up. The man in the red cloak says that His Imperial Majesty's servants have been coming down to ordinary people for a long time. He asks them to accept the message. It is necessary to get Qin Feng's head. Zai Yuan and Qin Feng cover their ears as they hear a very loud sound. Lin San stands at a loss. Qin Feng swears and asks who it is. He says that people on the cloud behave very arrogantly. Lin San says that this is the personal protection of His Imperial Majesty the Great. They are the first people in the Imperial City, their forces are great. Lin San stares at the Emperor's personal guards and says that even if they join forces, his cultivation is more powerful. The guy tells about 1,000 horsemen in armor. He is sure that if they start a fight, they will undoubtedly die. He asks if the guy has any ideas how to resolve this. Qin Feng decides that they will have to fight anyway. But at this moment, Qin Feng looks innocent and asks the personal guards who they are looking for. The man says that he has been going down to ordinary people for a long time. He demands that the guy accept His Majesty's command to get Qin Feng's head. Qin Feng turns to the man and asks if he can leave Zai Yuan and Lin San alone if he still overcomes the guy and brings his head. Zai Yuan and Lin San stand in disbelief. Zai Yuan tenses up. She asks what Qin Feng is doing. Had he decided to sacrifice himself? Lin San is trying to say something to his brother, but Qin Feng turns around and, smiling, asks his friends not to be afraid. He says he will protect them all. Qin Feng recalls that the man said that he only wants to defeat Qin Feng. The guy is convinced that he needs to sacrifice himself so that Zai Yuan and Lin San don't have any problems. Lin San looks gloomy, and Zai Yuan asks the young man if he is really going to make a sacrifice for her. Qin Feng turns around and says he will do anything for Zai Yuan. Qin Feng spreads his arms to the sides and says that the man can start the fight. He says that he is only an 8-year-old child, so it will be easy to get rid of him. The man swings his sword and asks the guy not to get mad at him. Zai Yuan shouts loudly. She screams that she won't let the guy sacrifice himself. Suddenly a huge lightning strikes. Everyone recoils from her as far as possible. Qin Feng turns around and winks at Zai Yuan. He admits that he has a gambling streak, but he didn't think that much. He likes to be strong. A portal appears, from which a huge turtle comes out, on the back of which stood a woman in a red dress. Zai Yuan was glowing all over, and the guys were looking at her. The woman in red was watching them. A man runs up to the head of the house and the elder, reporting that something terrible has happened. The men turn around and listen attentively to the servant. The servant addresses the head of the house and the elder, telling that the scout reported that His Imperial Majesty the Great sent his people to ordinary people. The servant also informs that near the border between Yinyu and the Great Xia, the Elder Master is winning the battle. Men ask what it means. They immediately get up from their chairs and break into a run. The head of the house points with his hand to the man and tells him to order 30 servants to go, as they should get out of the city with him faster. The man obeys. Right above Qin Feng, Zai Yuan and Lin San is a huge magical turtle, around which a strange aura hovers. Qin Feng notices the moon goddess of the Yinyu Empire. The guy says that Yinyu is in the top 5 masters. Qin Feng turns to Zai Yuan and asks if she is really the goddess Yinyu. The girl confirms his words. Qin Feng swears because he has been cheated again. He squeezes his hand and shows that he is angry. The moon goddess looks at the young man and smiles. She says he is very lively and expressive. The man turns to the moon goddess and says that this is a matter of the great empire, so she should not interfere. The moon goddess notices the general and puts her hand to her lips. She says she is just a weak girl, and he scares her so much. The girl asks if this is decent behavior. The general tries to say something, but he does not have time, as the moon goddess strikes him right on the stomach. The moon goddess demanded that he step back. The general fell on his back and all his men began to approach him, worried about the man. The woman directs her hand at the general, in which the energy was concentrated, and again turns to the general, saying that in the next life he will be more polite to weak girls. One of the fighters notices that the general is not breathing. Another fighter stretches out his hand to him and asks how the head of the Imperial city could not withstand even one blow of the moon goddess. Zai Yuan says they need to leave, but the moon goddess moves her finger and lifts into the air a guy and a girl who are going to escape. They scream, but they can't do anything. The woman, smiling, looks at Zai Yuan and asks the girl where she is going to run. Zai Yuan doesn't know what to say. Qin Feng becomes gloomy and wonders what this has to do with him. The moon goddess brings Zai Yuan and Qin Feng closer to her. They descend to the ground. The girl falls to her knees, and the guy is still on his feet. The moon goddess asks what happened. She asks the girl to tell about everything. Zai Yuan approaches the woman, lowers his head and addresses her. The moon goddess looks at the girl with displeasure. Qin Feng looks at them and wonders if it's too late to change the goal of conquest. The moon goddess asks how the girl knows that she is the niece of the moon goddess. The woman accepted that Zai Yuan left the house without saying anything, but she can't forgive the fact that the girl went to the Great Xia Empire on purpose so that she wouldn't be found. Zai Yuan covers her head with her hands and says she was mistaken. She asks her aunt not to hit her. Zai Yuan says that this time she has achieved a huge success. She shows Qin Feng, who is 8 years old, and he tells that the guy understood not only the essence, but also the invincible essence of the sword. She asks if it's interesting. The moon goddess looks at the guy. She understands that he is the son of the Qin family who has the imperial origin. She remembers that the guy tore the august bones out of his brother. The woman also knows that there is a reward for Qin Feng's head. Qin Feng turns to the moon goddess and, smiling, asks if a woman believes in love at first sight. A woman, grinning, asks if a small child knows what love at first sight is. She says that the guy only thinks about beautiful girls. Qin Feng confirms her words and says that he has decided that when he grows up, he will make the moon goddess his wife. The woman was laughing. Zai Yuan looked at the guy and cursed. She was worried about him, and he was talking to her aunt about indecent things. The woman bends down and says that Qin Feng is not an adult yet, but he is so confident. Qin Feng folds his arms over his chest and says that male self-confidence does not stem from determination, but from arrogance. The woman rubs Qin Feng's nose with her finger while he covers one eye. The girl smiles and says that she likes Qin Feng. Zai Yuan can't help but comment on the situation. The men sent by the emperor were still on the cloud, but there are also new participants in the conflict. The head of the house winked at the young man, showing that he had come to help his son. He informs his son so that no one will understand anything. He will pretend to be very fierce and will demand his life. But the guy shouldn't worry, as it will be a game. Qin Feng looks at his father in surprise. He thinks that his father has not come to him all this time. But as soon as a rich woman appeared on the horizon, he immediately appeared. Qin Feng rushed into the arms of the lazy goddess. He started shouting to the goddess that the people of the Qin family had come to get rid of him. He pretends to be scared. The guy informs his father that he is not going to accept his help. The man does not understand what happened to his son. The elder turns to the moon goddess and says that they regret that they did not come out earlier to meet her. The elder tells us that Qin Feng hurt his brother very badly. He hopes that the goddess respects his family. The man asks the moon goddess to give Qin Feng to them. At this time, the head of the house rubs the back of his head and looks at his son in bewilderment. He can't understand what happened to Qin Feng. Zai Yuan shouts that if men want war, then she will arrange it. She says that Qin Feng belongs to her. Everyone immediately falls silent, so they did not expect such a violent reaction from the girl. Zai Yuan is embarrassed and keeps his mouth open. Zai Yuan blushes even more, puts her hands on her sides and begins to explain that she meant something completely different. The girl wanted to say that M belongs to their lunar palace. The girl says it's better for them to go back. Zai Yuan turns to his aunt and asks if she said everything correctly. The moon goddess at this time struck her forehead with her hand, as she was not happy with the girl's decisions. The moon goddess thinks that Zai Yuan is ruining his life not only for the sake of Qin Feng, but they are also covering for each other. The woman thinks that if she forced Zai Yuan to leave with her now, then later on her path of cultivation it would be a demon in her heart. Then the moon goddess looks at Qin Feng and thinks that he has gone so far from his peers in cultivation, having developed his talents. The moon goddess asks what will happen if she says no. The elder says that in this case she will not have to blame them for the hospitality. The woman is sure that one elder will not hold her. The portal opens, and a huge turtle walks towards it, along with Zai Yuan and Qin Feng, who were sitting on its back. The woman says goodbye to the elder and says that they will see each other again. The head of the house concentrates his powers and creates a fireball in his hands. He shouts to the moon goddess not to behave arrogantly. The elder hits the top of the man's head with his hand and says that he is behaving very stupidly. The head of the house rubs the bruised place and asks what he did. The elder looks at him with displeasure. The elder looks at the moon goddess and says that Fang will be able to enter the moon palace. He wonders if it's not wonderful. The head of the house points at the woman and asks if she doesn't hate them. The elder strikes the top of the head of the house again and says that he is behaving ignorantly. He asks if the man really wants to hurt his son. The head of the clan raises his hand and asks the elder what they should do then. He says that people from the palace are watching their family. The man says that if they don't attack, it will reach the emperor and will certainly arouse suspicion. The elder winks and says that the head of the clan needs to look at him and learn. He creates a huge clot of energy and directs a huge clot of energy directly into the blue portal. The clot falls directly into the turtle, which has already passed the teleport. The elder descends to the fighters and informs them that Qin Feng wanted to spoil his desire for perfection with the help of a love potion. He considers such an act disgusting. One of the fighters says that since everything is so serious with love potions, then the animals in the forest should have gone mad. Another fighter says that animals in this case have fangs, and they are meat for them. Everyone runs to the sides. The head of the clan asks why the elder said about the love potion. The man asks what's wrong. Turtle and Qin Feng with Zai Yuan move to the Yinyu Empire, to the Moon Palace. They enter a huge beautiful hall and walk forward while all the servants of the clan bow and greet the moon goddess. The moon goddess leads Qin Feng by the hand. The girl leads Qin Feng through the hall of the moon palace. She asks the young man if he wants to see the moon palace. Qin Feng wipes the drool that flowed from his mouth and says he wants to take a look. He also mentions that according to the laws of the world, he saved the moon goddess and is now obliged to marry her. The woman laughs and, pointing her finger at the young man, says that he is very cheerful and constantly makes her laugh. The woman runs her finger over the guy's forehead, drawing the moon on it. She says she is officially appointing Qin Feng to the position of divine son in the Moon Palace. Qin Feng points his hand at the temple attendants and says that he will improve with them. The moon goddess says that everything that concerns the perfection of divine children, she is personally responsible for it herself. Qin Feng, blushing, looks at the moon goddess and says that, in this case, he will eat, sleep, and improve with her. The woman asks if Qin Feng really wants to improve with her. The guy is embarrassed, looks away and says that he wants not only to improve, but also to eat and sleep. Zai Yuan is angry because Qin Feng only thinks about her aunt. All this time she stood behind her aunt and watched the young man. The girl quickly approaches the guy, abruptly grabs him by the tail and pulls him along. Zai Yuan says that auntie is very busy with public service, so Qin Feng will live with her. The guy asks why he will live with Zai Yuan, and then he thinks about something, blushes and, smiling, says that this option suits him too. He thinks he can't be brought up alone. 7 years later, the guy was right next to the waterfall. The guy sat down on the rocks and drops of water dripped down his body. All the attendants of the temple watched Qin Feng and said that he was very handsome. A rabbit came up to the attendants, picked up the tickets and said that he was selling tickets. If the girls buy tickets, they can look at the guy for 5 minutes. He says he has the last ticket left. The girls accidentally launched a rabbit with a bag of earnings into the air. He flew very high, shouting that he was in danger. The rabbit fell into the water and surfaced right next to the guy. The guy was holding the tip of a sword. In front of him stood Zai Yuan, who was holding a sword in her hands, and praised Qin Feng for her quick reaction. The moon goddess came up to Qin Feng and started praising him for his skills. She said that she understands the will and essence of the sword are getting deeper and deeper. At this time, Zai Yuan was sheathing her sword. Qin Feng waved his hand and smiled, saying that if he wasn't strong, he wouldn't be able to marry the moon goddess. He understands that. Zai Yuan kicks the guy, scolding him. Qin Feng falls headfirst into the waters of the waterfall, in such a way that only his legs are visible. Then the guy swims out and straightens his hair with one hand. Qin Feng straightens his hair, closing one eye, and asks what Zai Yuan told him. The girl was still angry. She says that the guy has been thinking only about his aunt since childhood, not noticing that such a beautiful girl is standing next to him. Qin Feng sharply splashes water at the girl. She covers herself, trying to avoid getting water on her. Zai Yuan stood right in the water and ran to Qin Feng to strike him, being very angry. The guy recoiled. He asked the moon goddess to save him from the divine daughter. The moon goddess informs Qin Feng that in a few days there will be a competition of the dead, which is held once every 10 years. She asks if the guy wants to join her. The guy asks what kind of competitions and why he should participate in them. At this time, the girl pinches the young man. Zai Yuan turns around and says that Qin Feng has already become a divine son. If Qin Feng goes to fight for the title of Sacred Son in the Moon Palace again, then this should lower his status by idea. The moon goddess says that the Sacred Son of the Moon Palace, although just an Imperial son, but an Imperial son can always inherit the throne. The woman says that when Zai Yuan becomes a moon goddess, she will also become an emperor, which will greatly facilitate the family's conversations behind closed doors. The girl frowns. She says that this option suits her. She's worried that something might happen to Qin Feng. Qin Feng thinks that Zai Yuan does not take him for a stranger. The guy understands that he is waiting for a serious job. Qin Feng confidently looks at the moon goddess and says that he will take part in the competition. He just ran out of villain points. He will be able to earn extra points. The guy thinks that if he meets the beloved one chosen by heaven, he will be very happy. Qin Feng noticed how many people were watching him wash and cover his body with his hands. Qin Feng turns to the moon goddess and asks her not to be angry with the attendants. Qin Feng smiles and tells the girls not to try to spy on him anymore. He lets them go. The moon goddess looks at Qin Feng with displeasure and says that he indulges them too much. Qin Feng smiles and says that this is just his harmless hobby. He assures the woman that there is nothing to worry about. Qin Feng then turns around and says that the moon goddess has someone worth teaching a lesson to. The guy looks at the rabbit, which was going to leave with the prey. Qin Feng picked up the rabbit. He turns to the moon goddess and says that he will go to prepare for the competition. The moon goddess agrees with the guy and lets him go, finally reminding him that an ambassador from the Great Xia will arrive in 2 days to watch the competition. The moon goddess says that the emperor of the Great Xia has always considered the guy superfluous, so Qin Feng should be careful. Qin Feng gives a thumbs up and promises that he will be careful. The rabbit at this time thought that his life had come to an end. A servant approaches Zai Yuan and Qin Feng. She bends down and addresses the divine son with the news. The girl reported that a disciple of the chosen one of heaven had arrived at the moon palace. He wanted to challenge Qin Feng to a duel. Qin Feng was not impressed. He held the rabbit by the ears and pinched his cheek. At that moment, the rabbit realized that he would live. A guy came up to the palace. He started shouting at Qin Feng, calling him a traitor and challenging him to a fight. The guy was concentrating energy in his hand. He shouted that the guy would not be able to hide from him in the moon palace. The guy launched a huge stream of energy directly into the gates of the lunar palace. All the attendants ran out with spears to defend the palace, asking how the guy dares to attack their residence. They blocked his way inside. He smiled and asked what was going on. He wonders if Qin Feng really doesn't even dare to go out to fight, so he sends others to fight for him. Zai Yuan was already approaching the guy with the intention of solving the issue. She says that after the Great Xia is amazing, the girl is going to teach the guy manners, but she is stopped by Qin Feng, who blocks the way with his hand. The guy asks the girl to stop. Then he asks her to tell him if there is a chance that the guy is just obeying someone and following orders. Zai Yuan asks what it means. She asks if the guy really assumes that this is someone's trap. Qin Feng says that this is someone's trap, but not for him, but for the noble family from the Great Xia and the Yinyu Empire. The guy thinks about the fact that during the 7 years of the Great Xia dynasty, he taught one Imperial disciple, and he was personally mentored by the Emperor. It is clear to the guy that for the sake of appearance, this is a message to the distant lands of worthy talents. But in fact, by sending them to this place, they are trying to weaken the family so as not to support the chosen one of his kind. This time, a heaven-chosen noble from a noble family was sent to the Yinyu Empire. If something happens to him in the Yinyu domain, then his family will be obliged to declare war on Yinyu. Meanwhile, the Great Xia dynasty will be waiting for a good moment for itself. Qin Feng smiles rapaciously and thinks about what he can try to find out if his assumptions are true. Qin Feng steps forward. The ambassador notices the young man and begins to get angry. He raises his weapon and says that Qin Feng has finally appeared. He brings his knife forward to strike and shouts a battle cry. The knife flies straight at Qin Feng, but it takes him a second to dodge and capture a look at the ambassador. Qin Feng puts his hands on his belt and says that he thought the ambassador was some kind of talented master, but he turned out to be a very weak person. The ambassador gets even angrier. He asks what level Qin Feng has since he is the emperor's disciple. Qin Feng smiles and says that he is the 9th heaven of Superman. The ambassador is furious. He raises his hands and, raising his voice, asks where Qin Feng got such self-confidence from. He says that the 9th heaven of the Superman does not like the 4th heaven of the highest valor. Qin Feng asks the young man how he wants to engage in a duel with him. He suggests options, one or with a wall. The guy says he will be alone. Qin Feng snaps his fingers and grins. He says he understands everything. The guy spreads his hands and, addressing the attendants of the temple, says that the ambassador chose to fight alone. He tells the girls that they can attack. They obey. All the attendants of the temple approach the ambassador to attack him. The guy gets gloomy. He started backing off and asking what the girls were planning to do. While the girls are hitting the guy, he speaks negatively about Qin Feng.